Start in 90 seconds. Sheriff's Office. Please remain standing and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As of the last commission meeting, fortunately, no officers in California has lost their lives in the line of duty. Please join me for a moment of silence honoring the officers who have passed away since our last meeting. Thank you. Please join me in thanking the Butte County Sheriff's Office. And please take your seats. Thank you. Ms. Nunez, will you please take roll call?
Barcelona. Braun. Brazil. Donellan. Dudley.
Here.
Yule. Gordon. Long. Marsh. Nieto. O'Rourke. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to introduce Advisory Chair Committee Chief Jason Salazar to my left. And next to me, I am thrilled to introduce post first ever Chief Counsel, Toby Darden. And to my right, Post Executive Director, Manny Alvarez. So in addition to all that good news, I'm also thrilled to be able to announce that Tina Nieto is now the Sheriff of Monterey County. And please join me in applauding her for that great effort. Congratulations, Sheriff. At this time, we will have opening remarks provided by Sheriff Corey Honey of the Butte County Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Honey began his career as a deputy sheriff with the Butte County Sheriff's Office in May of 1993. Sheriff Honey served as a patrol deputy and a detective until March 2000. From March 2000 to May 2014, he served as an investigator for the Butte County District Attorney's Office. Sheriff Honey became the 31st Sheriff of Butte County on May 24th, 2014. In February 2017, Sheriff Honey played a key role in the emergency response to the Orville Dam spillway crisis, which resulted in the evacuation of an estimated 180,000 residents of Northern California. In November 2018, Sheriff Honey was again called upon to help lead and manage the emergency response to the devastating Camp Fire, which to this date is the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in California's history. Sheriff Honey has served as an instructor of several post-certified courses, including as an instructor at the Law Enforcement Academy at Butte College. Among his other duties, Sheriff Honey currently serves as the president of the California State Sheriff's Association. Sheriff Honey, we welcome you to the commission, and you have the floor.
I'm Chair, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I have to tell you, it is an incredible honor to be here today, and I want to thank not only Executive Director Alvarez for the invitation, but also the commission for giving me the opportunity to make opening comments to you today. Today, this body will consider two items that are directly related to the topic I would like to discuss, that of wellness, both physical and mental, within the ranks of the law enforcement profession. This is a topic that I've been focusing on within my department since the 2018 Camp Fire that took place in Butte County. The response to that incident placed extraordinary strain on my staff, and it was immediately apparent that if we did not take steps to mitigate the stress that accompanied that response, their wellness would be negatively impacted for years to come. Since then, law enforcement personnel throughout California have had to deal with innumerable natural disasters, civil unrest, heightened scrutiny on our profession, and a pandemic that put us on the front lines of having to deal with communities in crisis. The stress and pressure on law enforcement personnel has been crushing. That has taken a toll on their mental and physical well-being, to say the least. I was recently interviewed by the presenters of a leadership course who were preparing a segment of training relevant to leadership within the public safety sector. And one of the interviewers asked me what I believed currently poses the greatest or most significant risk to public safety. I pondered that question and thought about the several challenges that we currently face. I'm sure many of you are aware of those, and they come to mind, increases in violent crime, the proliferation of fentanyl within our communities, certainly the negative perceptions of law enforcement that we have to contend with. But then I realized, from my perspective, the most significant threat to public safety is the increasingly difficult time we're having in recruiting and retaining people who are inspired to be law enforcement professionals. Now, I'm sure that most law enforcement executives would agree that recruitment and retention are becoming more and more challenging every day. If you don't believe it, just look on the back pages of the most recent editions of PORAC magazine. You will find numerous ads for employment opportunities in agencies throughout the state of California, offering six-figure salaries and significant signing bonuses. Yet the problem continues. Without good staff, without people who are inspired to the vision of providing law enforcement services and protecting our communities, we are not able to effectively protect our communities from the wide range of threats impacting public safety. And I believe that there is a direct correlation between the health and well-being of law enforcement personnel and our ability to retain staff and attract quality candidates. I'll add at this point that when I talk about law enforcement staff, I'm not just talking about sworn officers and deputies. I'm also talking about our civilian staff and our dispatchers, because we need them to be as healthy as well in order for them to provide the service they need. Now, given how difficult it is to find and keep staff, it's vitally important for us to develop strategies and practices that promote physical and mental wellness for our staff for the entirety of their careers. especially when you consider now that the retirement age for people entering into the field from the sworn status is 57. The expectation being that they're capable of providing the level of service that our communities deserve into that age bracket further illustrates why it's important that we keep people both physically and mentally healthy. Unfortunately, however, the law enforcement profession has not been good about promoting physical and mental wellness among its ranks. After the completion of the basic academy, most agencies do not require staff to maintain their physical fitness. And we see that in terms of injuries and illnesses that are prevalent among our staff members. And when it comes to mental well-being, there's still significant stigma when it comes to discussing the need to address the impacts of stress and cumulative emotional trauma that accompanies a career in law enforcement. Beyond recruitment and retention, why is it so important that we pay closer attention to the health and well-being of our staff? Well, I think there's plenty of evidence to support the assertion that officers who are physically and mentally fit are more confident about their ability to handle volatile situations and make better decisions about which level of force is appropriate in a given situation. I also believe that they're better able to de-escalate situations when it's called for. And law enforcement officers and agencies that employ them have been shown to have higher potential exposure to liability for excessive force when the involved officers are not physically and mentally fit. We often deal with people who are experiencing trauma, who are in situations where perhaps it's their the worst day of their life. And if our staff has a better understanding of how to respond to someone in crisis, respond to trauma, they're going to be in a better situation to de-escalate that, or at least find a resolution to the problem that hopefully addresses the underlying causes of the situation in the first place. Physical and mental wellness, in my view, and I think most people would agree, are inextricably connected. They, in many respects, it's hard to have one without the other. And so we have to pay attention both to the mind as well as the body. In addition to that, physical and mental well-being is a foundation for resiliency. We need resilient law enforcement professionals who are better able to deal with the increasing physical and mental demands of this position. And I think it's safe to say that this may be the most challenging time in our history to be a law enforcement officer. Now more than ever, we must develop and support a wellness and resiliency culture within our ranks. We owe that to the people who serve within our departments, and we owe that to our communities who expect our people to be well and fit when they respond to the community to address whatever threat they might be encountering. Now, I think that we have an unprecedented opportunity with recent focus on wellness. The fact is, this is the first time in my 30-year career that some attention is being paid to wellness of law enforcement professionals. And it goes back to the culture that we have experienced in the past, which is an expectation that you make time on your own time to maintain fitness, but if you don't, no one's going to hold you accountable. And with regard to stress and trauma that might result in mental a concern about your mental well-being, in the past, you were expected just to force that down and not talk about it for fear that if someone thought that you weren't mentally capable of doing the job, that they would take your badge and your gun away and not let you do the job. Now, I'm encouraged to see that Post is considering the adoption of a new learning domain that will be offered in the Basic Academy that pertains to wellness. It is absolutely needed and frankly, probably past due. But we have to seize the opportunity that we have right now. And I think this new focus allows us to do that. That said, the overall wellness and resiliency that we want to develop as a culture within law enforcement needs to be promoted and practiced throughout the entirety of the career. We can't expect people to maintain physical and mental well-being by putting them through the academy, giving them a couple of weeks of instruction at best, on why that's important and then turning them loose for the next 30 years without the tools necessary to deal with that. That's why I also support the proposal to work with the UC San Diego to develop wellness programs for law enforcement agencies. My hope is that these workshops will focus on developing a culture of overall wellness and resiliency within the law enforcement profession. And when I say that, I use that word very specifically. It's about developing a culture of wellness, not only for our staff, but I think that translates into our encounters and interactions with the people in the communities that we serve. I believe this should include developing strategies for law enforcement agencies to utilize when they're spending their allocation of the $50 million wellness funding that was authorized in this year's state budget. I know that I'm not alone among my peers in anxiously anticipating the distribution of those funds so that we can put them to good use. That is an incredible step forward, and I would applaud Governor Newsom in advocating and championing that. I'm glad to see that that was ultimately put out there. But I think it's incumbent upon us in law enforcement to make sure that we're spending those dollars wisely, that we're spending them in a way that actually works towards developing a culture of wellness within our organizations. And so the guidance that we could potentially get from the study that's being done by UC San Diego, I think has a great deal of value. I'm hopeful that with this new emphasis on wellness, law enforcement personnel will improve I'm hopeful that this new emphasis on wellness of law enforcement personnel will improve the working conditions of our staff. And by improving the working conditions, I'm hoping that that will improve retention and also recruitment. And also, I think equally as important, enhance the delivery of services to the communities that we serve. So with that said, I would really like to see Post take a leadership role in this space to ensure that officer wellness is a concept that is introduced during basic training and is promoted through the entirety of the law enforcement career. Now, what that looks like, I don't exactly know. I think that that remains to be seen, but I do think that it's something that Post should work towards ensuring that law enforcement agencies are working towards that culture change that's so vitally important right now, focusing in on both mental as well as physical wellness of those members of the staff and building resiliency so that they can continue to meet the challenges that they're facing today. As I often say to my staff when I talk about wellness, I say this: invest in wellness now or pay for illness and injury and the negative outcomes of not being well later on. Thank you again for the opportunity. It was a huge honor for me to be here today to speak with you about a topic that I am very passionate about. And it was also quite an honor to see my honor guard present the colors today. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sheriff. Your honor guard was terrific.
Thank
But those words about officer wellness certainly ring true to everyone on this commission. We've all felt very strongly about that, and Manny has been an absolute leader in ensuring that we get those programs out there. So thank you for that and for everything you've done. Any other questions or comments for the sheriff? Wonderful. Well, thank you again.
Thank you all again. Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
This is the time set aside for members of the public to comment on items on the commission agenda. Pursuant to the commission policy, the commission chair will manage the public comment period in deference to the commission's workload and meeting time constraints. Up to 15 minutes is allotted at the beginning of each commission meeting for public comments on items on the agenda. Based on recent events, more people than usual may want to address the commission. Therefore, if required, we may go longer than 15 minutes, but limit this period to no more than 1 hour, as we have many topics to cover on the agenda. Members of the public who wish to speak are asked to limit their remarks to no more than 5 minutes each. If we have many people who speak on the same topic, I, as the chair, may intervene and will ask that you limit remarks to no more than 1 minute. Pursuant to existing commission policy, the chair may conclude the public comment period if multiple speakers are voicing repetitive or similar statements and the 15-minute public comment period has expired. Please be advised that the commission cannot take any action on items not on the agenda. Please remember that this meeting is being transcribed, so I may politely interrupt you and ask you to repeat or speak slowly and clearly so your comment can be correctly captured in the transcript. At this time, is there anyone who would like to address the commission during public comment? Seeing no one, we will continue with the meeting. At this time, the executive director would like to address the commission. Executive Director Alvarez.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to speak to the commission again today, and welcome back to all of our commissioners. Appreciate everything that you all have been doing over the last year on SB2. We have a presentation on SB2 this afternoon, so I will not go into those details. But I would like to start with two questions that have been asked directly of me by the commission, and two questions that I anticipate will come up during the conversation today. So the first question actually came up in significant fashion at the advisory committee, and that is the status of Assembly Bill 89 and the implementation of Assembly Bill 89. It came up by two of the advisory members this morning, and I was prepared to speak to you about it today. AB 89 will be coming to the commission in July of 2023. AB 89 was signed approximately a year ago. It is currently in the court, the ball court, so to speak, of the Community College Chancellor's Office. AB 89 did two things. One, it changed the minimum age for peace officers from 18 to 21, and it also addressed the minimum education requirements to become a peace officer in California. That is the second aspect that is being worked on as we speak. What that bill calls for is that the Community College Chancellor's Office create a modern policing degree program in the community colleges, which is transferable to either the CSU or the UCs, and that will be a requirement to be a police officer in California. However, it also includes some carve-outs for other higher education experience, military experience, military service, and so forth. It's written into the bill in very specific language. The Community College Chancellor's Office has the requirement to produce recommendations to the legislature or publish recommendations to the legislature by June 2023 on what the modern policing degree will look like and recommendations for post-implementation. Post will have 2 years to review and adopt those recommendations. We are part of the Community College Chancellor's Office AB 89 Task Force. We have 2 members that sit on that task force, one who sits as a co-chair and one who sits as a task force member. There are a number of academics and a number of administrators from both the community colleges and from CSUs, as well as representation from PORAC, Cal Chiefs, and Cal Sheriffs. There are monthly meetings that are being held. First one was was in November. The next one is next Friday. They're public meetings, they're online, and they anticipate holding those task force meetings through May so that they can publish their recommendations to the legislature and to post by June 2023. Then it will come back to post and to this commission. I strongly encourage you all to look at AB 89. If you haven't, it's not a lengthy bill, but it will be significant for the profession. The requests this morning were related to more engagement by some of our police academies in California that they felt like they've been left out. That will be communicated by us to the Community College Chancellor's Office, but it is currently in their court. So that's the first question that has come up from you all and has come up from the advisory this morning. The second one is a request by the commission for an update on the History of Policing project. As I mentioned in September, there are 3 phases to that project. The first one is student workbooks and the training and testing specifications. The second one is video interview production. And then the last one is historical video vignettes by the Museum of Tolerance. So the status of those is as follows. Student workbook, We have a draft. It's been reviewed. I appreciate the feedback on the student workbook draft. We hope to have that finalized by March. I'll send that back out for another revision to those that are reviewing it. And we hope to have the training and testing specifications to you by March. In terms of the video interview production, we completed our first interview on November 2nd with 2 former SAC police officers, both of which were the first female officers in the Sacramento region and both African American. They spoke about their upbringing in the African American community in Sacramento, their challenges getting into the profession, and their positive approach and appreciation for being in law enforcement. The second one is scheduled for December 19th at San Diego. The San Diego Sheriff's Deputy, who is an immigrant, an undocumented immigrant, farm worker with her family, is now a naturalized citizen and is a peace officer in San Diego. In terms of the third phase, the Museum of Tolerance, as of November 3rd, they are committed to completing it by the end of June. So we will continue to have our engagement with them. That is the status of the history of policing. We will keep you updated and hopefully have things for you for a vote at the March meeting. So the anticipated questions two are, one, the first question is about hiring. I know there's going to be a question about hiring. Where are you with the hiring, since there is a big push to get more people on board? You'll receive a very detailed hiring status update for SB2 in one of the presentations. But in terms of posts in general, as of yesterday, we have 145 full-time positions and 4 retired annuitants. To give all of you context, at any time over the course of the last year, 2 years, 3 years, the average staffing was 115 up to 125 staff members. So we have grown since July by 20 to 30 full-time staff members. Our full-time staffing under SB2 is 263 positions if we're fully staffed. As I mentioned at the September meeting, generally we run about a 10% vacancy rate. We also have issued conditional job offers that have been accepted to just over 15 people, I believe. The number changes daily, so I don't have a precise number, for approximately 15 individuals that'll come on board between now and the end of the year. We have 8 applications from former law enforcement folks to be retired annuitants. So the goal really is to get to full staffing of between 230 and 260. As I mentioned at previous meetings, if we could get 50% of those bodies by the end of the year, I think we would be in a good spot. We are very, very close to getting those 50%. If we can get up to 160 bodies by the end of the year, we'll reach that threshold, factoring in the vacancies. I appreciate the fact that everybody in this room has been doing interviews almost on a daily basis. Our HR people are pushing out job announcements almost every single day. We are definitely still in need of a lot of people. There is no question that is a stressor for us. It's a very, very difficult job market, as we all know, and it's a very, very difficult job market in the state right now as we're competing with other state agencies. But we're doing our part, and I think we're actually in a very good spot. Yes, we could definitely be in a much better spot, but we are in a good position, and I thank our HR team for putting us there. The second anticipated question is, where are you going to put all these people? I know that's come up, and I'd like to just address space. So in September, we obtained short-term swing space in this building for approximately 40 staff members. They moved into that space in the first or second week of September, shortly after the last commission meeting. A couple of weeks ago, we signed a new lease for permanent space, partial permanent space in this building for approximately 30 additional staff members. And I want to thank Maria Sandoval and her team that have really worked hard to put that together. When Maria said, hey, we're going to get this done by the end of October for the swing space, it was done in September. And I remember saying, good luck, Maria. But she did it. So thank you, Maria, and the rest of the team that worked on it. Aside from that, the regular work at Post continues and nothing stops. We continue to do the regular day-to-day work. We completed an audit of Allen Hancock College the week of November 13th. We delivered a management study to a medium-sized law enforcement agency down in Southern California this week. If you've seen some of our social media posts, we're definitely taking a stab at doing better social media outreach. So please take a look at such things such as LinkedIn. As you all know, from the approval of a contract for a new learning management system that's been completed, at least the contract's in place for Blackboard. It's a multi-million-dollar contract to transition everything that we have on the learning portal to a new vendor. And we've also engaged in the last couple of months in a significant project to review background files at 48 agencies in Northern California for the last 5 years. That included reviewing 2,900 files, background files. We were hoping to have that done by the end of October. We'll probably have that done the first couple of days of December. We have a couple of small agencies left, but we've reviewed close to 2,900 files in the process. And for that, I want to thank LEC Dave Honda, who's been leading that project, and Charles Sandoval, the TDC folks, the TDC team, and everybody else who jumped in from other bureaus to help get that done. So thank you. A couple of other thank yous. I want to thank Carrie and Katie for always putting this thing together and making all this happen. It's a lot of work. So thank you to Katie and Carrie. And I'd like to just thank the staff for the continued heavy workload that they're getting done on everything, whether it's training standards or SB2 or POSAD. I would also like to just take a couple of moments, Madam Chair, to recognize somebody, if you will help me with it.
Sure.
Okay. And I'd like to stand, if I may, and have that person come up. If I may, she's looking at me. Former Commissioner Bettine Ramirez, if you can please come up. Thank you. Many of you know former Commissioner Bettine, who served on the Post Commission for a number of years. And she left, she retired, she started working overseas. We couldn't get her back. But she's back today, and she's getting on a plane this afternoon to fly presumably to Asia again, or I don't know where. But just wanted to take some time to thank Bettine. As you all know, on the commission, she was always a trooper, always engaged.
Feisty, he means feisty.
Feisty. But no, I want to thank you, Bettine. Bettine also did a lot of behind the scenes work at Placer County Deputy Sheriff's Association with Placer County. I know from some of your stuff in the past, all the work that you did when Mike Davis passed away, when he was killed in the line of duty, all the things that you did for his family and for the department. That should never be forgotten, Bettine. I know you were always an advocate for helping. So I'd like to read the resolution to you word for word, if I may. No, but I'm going to read it. All right. Thank you. Okay. Oh, thank you. All right. I'm going to read it verbatim. This is how it reads. Whereas Bettine J. Ramirez graduated from the Basic Law Enforcement Academy at the Santa Rosa Junior College Public Safety Training Center on December 7th, 2001. Whereas Bettine Ramirez began her distinguished law enforcement career as a deputy sheriff for the Placer County Sheriff's Office on December 15, 2001. Whereas Bettine Ramirez was promoted to sergeant on January 23rd, 2016. Whereas Bettine Ramirez served in numerous assignments at the Placer County Sheriff's Office, including patrol, investigations, coroner, and custody. Whereas Bettine Ramirez served as the chief deputy coroner for the Placer County Sheriff's Office from September 2000 to March 2022. Whereas Bettine Ramirez served admirably for many years as the president of the Placer County Deputy Sheriff's Association and the president of the Placer 1035 Foundation. Bettina Ramirez, whereas Bettina Ramirez was appointed by Governor Edmund G. Brown Jr. as a commissioner for the California Commission on Post in September 2015, and subsequently reappointed by Governor Brown in February 2017 and Governor Gavin Newsom in February 2020. Whereas Bettina J. Ramirez retired from the Placer County Sheriff's Office on March 11th, 2022, after 20 years of honorable service to the residents of the state of California. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Bettina J. Ramirez has provided sage and insightful direction to Post. It is in the spirit of gratitude and appreciation that the California Commission on Post presents this resolution and remains eternally thankful for all she has contributed and all she has accomplished. Thank you, Bettina.
I just want to say thank you so much. It's been an honor to be part of this. And I think this room sets a good example of what politicians should be like, because we fought like adults and we ended like adults. We love each other. Jeff and I fought all the time. We never really agreed on a whole lot, but I love that man. So like I said, I think we're a great example. There's great people in this room. I'm very honored to have had this opportunity, and to all the men and women that I got to represent, that on off times and hours that I would get phone calls, text messages, especially when I was battling in here for the boots on the ground, that were like, hey, don't ever leave. And you know, another great person, my Sheriff Ed Bonner, said, always leave on top. And I feel I did. So thank all of you for the opportunity.
And I have one more. So I was going to do this next one with the Vice Chair, Rick Brazil. He became ill yesterday, so he couldn't make it. He was actually going to help present to Bettina as well. So I believe he reached out to Bettina individually, as well as to Joyce Studley. So Joyce, if you could please come up as the chair of the commission. So we all know the chair. We know her as Joyce. But I just wanted to say a couple of things that are perhaps unknown to many of you, but Joyce has been working with Post for as long as any of us have been at Post or working with Post. I'm gonna give you a couple of tidbits of information and some personal tidbits of the help that you've provided us with. So you first started, as far as I know, in 2000, helping to produce courtroom testimony. In 2009, you worked on hate crimes. 2014, bias-based policing. 2015, homelessness and policing. 2017, End of Life Act. 2019, use of force legal update. So I want to give just a couple of personal things about Joyce and my interaction with Joyce. So I would at times have weekly phone calls with Joyce to give her updates, sometimes ask for advice. Sometimes seek help. She's always there, usually on a treadmill at 8 a.m. I could hear it going back and forth, or on the elliptical. Sometimes at 6 a.m. she'd say, call me between 6 and 6:30. It's like, okay. But would always take my call, including in the evenings. So when use of force started to come around, about 4 years ago, there was all kinds of use of force legislation and significant push on law enforcement and significant push on Post. And I remember in one instance reaching out to Joyce and saying, Joyce, we're looking at some of this data from NYPD, and they've reduced their officer-involved shootings. The media is saying it's because of shooting at moving vehicles. Take a look at this stuff and tell me what you think. And she said, don't worry. I know somebody at NYPD. I'm going to give them a call and have them help us out. So Joyce sends an email to, I believe, Cyrus Vance, if I'm not mistaken, the DA for Manhattan that we see on TV and like the number 3 guy at NYPD. And I'm on this email chain going, why am I on this chain? I probably should say nothing. And of course, they were very responsive in helping out and sending their opinions and what they did in New York and at NYPD to reduce the number of officer-involved shootings. Then we got to AB 392. And we reached out to Joyce and said, Joyce, we need to put something together on the law on AB 392. Can you help? Yes, what can I do? And it's like, well, can you get us a couple more DAs? We need attorneys. We're not attorneys. And she said, I got it. I'll take care of it. So you got DA Mike Hestron and DA Gil Otero from Imperial County and Riverside County to help us put that project together. They took 2 or 3 days of their time to put it together. Thought it was great. And then on a Friday night, we started getting phone calls from attorneys saying, you guys screwed this up when the video came out. And it's like, no, we didn't. They're just advocates. They don't know what they're talking about. Joyce engages in a long back and forth on case law with one of the attorneys. And in the end, Joyce goes, they're right. I think we messed it up. So we had to take the video offline over the weekend and tell them we're going to correct it. Well, they wanted a meeting immediately. It's like, all right, we'll set up a meeting. So Joyce says, all right, what do I need to do? It's like, oh, come. The meeting's on Monday. This is on the weekend. It's a holiday. You flew in on a Sunday. The building was dark when we met with them and addressed their concerns and got it all resolved. That's how you always did things with us, Joyce. It was always, the conversation always ended with, how can I help? Always, every call, how can I help? I appreciate that. I know all of our predecessors that were at Post that work with you appreciated that. And I just want to thank you personally for that. And I also want to read the resolution to you first. Will you hold it now? Thanks, Kim. I also want to, well, before I read it, so we have a couple of wellness things on the agenda. It was not planned. Sheriff Honey spoke on his own behalf on wellness. As we all know, this was your baby years ago. It's like, Joyce is going to ask about wellness. You guys better be ready. We better keep doing this. You've talked about your son in the firefighting profession at multiple meetings. You've held symposiums and seminars on wellness. So hopefully the culmination of your efforts will be displayed today. But thank you, Joyce. And I'm going to read this now. Thank you, Kate. Okay. Whereas Joyce E. Dudley earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology, a Master of Education degree in childhood education, and a Master of Arts degree in education with an emphasis on administration. Whereas Joyce Dudley served as the Child Development Director for the Children's Home Society of California from 1979 to 1984, and as the Child Development Director for the Community Action Commission of Santa Barbara County from 1984 to 1988. Whereas Joyce E. Dudley earned a Doctor of Jurisprudence degree from the Santa Barbara College of Law and was admitted to the State Bar in California in 1990. From what I read, the next day you were hired after you passed the bar. Whereas Joyce E. Dudley was appointed Deputy District Attorney for the County of Santa Barbara in 1990 and was elected the DA of the County of Santa Barbara in June 2010. Whereas Joyce E. Dudley has served as the national co-chair of Prosecutors Against Gun Violence and has received numerous awards, including the 2015 Attorney of the Year by Santa Barbara Women Lawyers, the California District Attorneys Association Jenkins Mentor of the Year in 2016, the 2018 Santa Barbara Woman of the Year by the Junior League, and in 2022, the Champion for Kids Award by the National District Attorneys Association. And I know that was a big surprise for you. I called Joyce. She was in Denver and she goes, you're not going to believe what had happened. So I know that was a big deal for you. Whereas Joyce E. Dudley was appointed as a commissioner for the California Commission on Post in October 2013 by Governor Edmund G. Brown Jr., and thereafter reappointed multiple times to the Commission on Post by Governors Brown and Gavin Newsom. Whereas Joyce E. Dudley was appointed by Governor Brown as chair of the commission in September 2016. Now therefore be it resolved that Joyce E. Dudley has honorably served the state of California for over 30 years. As the governor appointed chair of the Post Commission for the last 6 years, she has provided sage and insightful direction to the staff at Post. It is in the spirit of gratitude and appreciation that the California Commission on Post presents this resolution and remains eternally thankful for all she has contributed and all she has accomplished. And we wish you well in retirement. We know, I always say you're like a shark. Your movement never stops. So I don't know how you're going to retire, but we wish you the best in retirement, Joyce. Thank you for everything. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Picture. Get Toby up here for a picture. New lawyer. Sure. I won't take long, but I do have a few things to say. As Manny was speaking, I kept reflecting on the Beatles song, All You Need Is Love. This commission has taught me that in spades. I care so deeply about our law enforcement officers on the street, their families, and the communities that they serve. When I was first asked to be on the commission, I couldn't imagine a higher honor until I became the chair. The deep concern that the commissioners hold is something that I could not possibly articulate. Every decision they make, they weigh so carefully because they want to do the right thing for the right reason. And so it has been extraordinary for me to work with this extraordinary group of people and to listen to their concerns and their honesty, and they're so deliberate. You know, we've had some difficult discussions. We changed the oath for law enforcement officers. We all put forth our passion for officer wellness. And at times we had heated debates, but each time people stepped up here and said the right thing for the right reason, and I got to watch it. And it was like my dinner with Andre, that old film where you just get to sit there and listen to people talks from their heart and their head. The commission staff has been incredible. During the period of time that I've been here, I've had some big personal moments. I flew into a meeting and I got on the phone that my son was about to have a baby, or not about to, not my son either, but my son just found out that his girlfriend was pregnant, and I came to the meeting and said, wow, I'm going to be a grandmother. And Connie and everybody just stepped up and were right there for me. Coincidentally, maybe not, the day that Nettie called me and asked me to become chair was the same day I found out that my husband had pancreatic cancer. My father died of pancreatic cancer, so I knew how that was going to end. And I said, gee, I just don't know that I can do this, and at the same time care for my husband in the way he deserved to be cared for. And she said, do you want to try? And I said, I did. Once again, this is exactly where I needed to be during that very difficult time in my life. The love, back to the love again. And then Manny, can't do this without crying. I remember your first interview. I remember being so excited about the fact that you were going to become our new leader. I didn't know that you'd also become one of my best friends. Thank you for the extraordinary job you're doing. Thank you for being such a great friend to me. And thank you all for this honor. I need a 5-minute break. Just give me 5 minutes. We will start right up again, you know me, at 5:02.
You okay?
Oh, you're, that was brutal. Beautifully done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey. You're good? Commissioner Long? Oh, it's always. Okay. Commissioner Long? Hey, Jeff. Once you have Alvin, what?
You say she's leaving. I don't need to listen to her anymore.
That's it. That's it. I get that in my office too. Okay, everyone. Okay, we will be having a presentation on consent items 8 through 10 with the commission. Oh, sorry. Thank you. This is why I love Toby. This and many other reasons is why I love Toby, because we haven't approved the minutes yet. Let's start with that. Our first item is the approval of the action summary and meeting minutes from September 22nd, 2022 commission meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the September 22?
Motion.
That 2022 meeting. Whew. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Questions, comments, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Jeff, why are you looking at me like that? What?
And say the motion passes.
And the motion passes unanimously. That's what Commissioner Long was waiting for. Manny, I also want to say, I mean, I'm not even going to get into the emotion of the things you were saying about me, but I always look forward each commission meeting to hearing your words and hearing about the incredible work that the staff and you continue to do. It is Herculean efforts and deeply appreciated by our whole state. So thank you. We'll be having a presentation on consent items 8 through 10. Would the commission like a report on any of the other consent item agendas? Hearing nothing, we will now move to consent item 8. At this time, I will call upon law enforcement consultant Michael Dallasay, Management Counseling and Projects Bureau, to provide us a report regarding the vehicle pursuit guidelines. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and congratulations. Thank you for everything you've done for us in law enforcement.
Thank you.
And to the commissioners, good afternoon, and my post colleagues, good afternoon, and thank you for coming up for round 2. Really briefly on the pursuit guidelines, this was about a year in process. I am new to post, and so I assume that the finalization of the process working with OAL, and we finalized the guidelines. They are live now. We've provided bulletins for the agencies throughout the state of California. And just to be brief, some of the updates, because it hasn't been updated since 2007, consist of, or actually pertain to immunity as it relates to the Penal Code Section 13519 and various vehicle code sections. Some of them relate to driving tactics, pursuit intervention, and hazards to uninvolved bystanders and motorists. I think to sum it all up for brevity is we provided additional guidance for our law enforcement partners on weighing out the need to immediately apprehend versus the risk to the community. Also, lastly, I will add that Regulation 1081, the minimum standards for legislatively mandated courses, has been updated to reflect these changes as well. Madam Chair or Commissioners, I'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Any questions? Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, now, nobody has any questions about the next piece. At this time, I will call upon Assistant Executive Director Anne Marie Delmagano, Executive Office, to provide us with the report regarding the implementation status of Senate Bill 2 and the new Peace Officers Standards Accountability Division.
Thank you, Madam
Thank you,
Chair,
Anne Marie.
and congratulations again. I'll echo that. It's a very touching speech. Well, I can't top that, nor will I try. And so we're going to talk about something that was a little more painstaking than Joyce's tribute. And that is getting to this point where we're 4.5 weeks to launch SB2 and all that goes with it. And so some of you were around for the advisory committee hearing and you heard some of the updates. So I'm going to briefly review some of those again and then open it up to questions about certain aspects of the update that you want more information on. Specifically, I know everyone, as Manny mentioned, is very interested in where we're at with staffing, and there's roughly 89 division positions that will work on staff misconduct in some form and also certification. There's 29 staff hired in the division. There's 50 positions that are currently under some phase of recruitment. We have 9 law enforcement consultants are currently working and seated, and we need to fill about 19 more. As Manny mentioned, we have some in the hopper right now that are RAs that we hope to bring on to the division to help us to review these serious misconduct cases when they come in. To date, OAL has now approved 7 rulemaking packages, so 1 more from this morning, which means they're actively working through some of our regulatory documents. And I want to thank Katie Strickland for all her help in managing the various packages that have been going through the process and all the deliberation back and forth and the various 15-day comments. I think when you guys see the regulations today, you'll realize how many different public postings we've had to do for each of these regulatory packages, and it's no small task. Again, those regulatory packages set the groundwork for the proof of eligibility, notice of appointment, notice of separation, attestation of peace officer eligibility for the background portion of it, the hearing process for decertifications, the reporting to the National Decertification Index, and also verification for qualifications. Today, you're going to be reviewing 5 different packages that have to do with the more meat of the serious misconduct process that these cases will go through. Some of the factors the commission will consider in looking at suspension, revocation, temporary suspension orders, etc. Cancellation of appointments, and then the public complaint process. We'll review those in detail under those regulatory items. And as a training update, I made an error this morning when I reported out 72 courses have been trained, not law enforcement agencies. There are most often at least 2 or 3 different agencies represented at each of these courses. So we roughly have probably trained about 65% of the law enforcement agencies in the state to date on SB2. In addition, I mentioned that we're going to be recording our SB2 Session A, Session B, so that individual law enforcement agencies that have not had an opportunity to come and take the training in person will be able to do so self-directed. There's also email inboxes set up for specific questions those agencies may have on the process. Over 2,500 personnel have been trained to date. We also have been training on our new case management system, which is the Mark 43 system. We've had a soft launch. We talked about that this morning, November 28th. There are 4 specific law enforcement agencies that were involved in the soft launch. We have 2 cases right now pending in the system, and we're working through all of that process to make sure there's no kinks when we go live, which will be as of December 16th for all of those agencies that have undergone the Mark 43 training. And then December 28th, all agencies statewide will go live in Mark 43. The 40-hour decertification course for the Peace Officer Standards and Accountability Advisory Board is in the process of being finalized. There are 16 hours that are devoted to the governance of the board, Open Meeting Act rules, responsibilities, adjudication proceedings. But then there's also 24 hours that are really related to the work of peace officers and what internal investigations look like, what evidentiary standards are, the use of force standards and training that peace officers undergo, and the local disciplinary processes that are afforded to peace officers when there is an employment issue. The pilot course is scheduled to be held February 13th through 17th, and then the full rollout scheduled for March 2022. And that will be a public meeting that's also open to commissioners that want to see the training firsthand. In terms of technology, Post has procured evidence.com through Axon, not LexisNexis. And that's a cloud-based environment to store audio and video recordings that agencies may submit along with their serious misconduct cases. The staff will be undergoing training for that in early December. We are also awaiting DOJ felony conviction data. And we were anticipating that in early October, but because of some delays that Toby has worked out for us in terms of our handling of that data and how we store it and what we do with it and who it should properly be delivered to, we are hoping to get that electronic transfer within the next few weeks. In terms of program updates and policy development, staff continue to work on various policies that are really pertinent to the work we're going to do internally before you folks actually see a case before you. And that has to do with how we prioritize complaints and cases, what the findings report will look like and the exhibits, which will demonstrate why we're bringing this case before the board and then the commission for some administrative action. So there will be a findings report with exhibits that demonstrate why this case rises to the level of one of the 9 standards of serious misconduct. We will also be developing policies, and they're in the final stages for the temporary suspension orders for the staff's work on revocation in response to conviction data. And again, how we're reporting to the National Decertification Index for those cases that move forward for revocation. Post is in the process and will be continuing ongoing discussions with the governor's office, the administration, on how to rectify some of the policy issues around PRAs and release of data that is within Post jurisdiction when the cases are transmitted to Post. And as I mentioned this morning, some of our concern is the timing of the release of information. If it would otherwise compromise an ongoing investigation, place a witness or victim in jeopardy, or otherwise is not appropriate to be released from Post, but rather the law enforcement agency that compiled the data and the case, who would be the most familiar with what aspects of the case should not be disclosed. And determining that balance between the public's right to know and also protecting the public from information that is not ready to be disclosed. So that's all I have for you today. Are there any questions about some of the things that we're doing and the amazing work of this team? I mentioned it this morning, and I hope people aren't getting tired of hearing it, but it was a remarkable job by this group, by the commission, to make the decisions on the policy. And I know some of it, again, was painful and long. And we're going to talk about 1205 today, and then hopefully no one throws any of their toys, but we're getting there. And I think it's just a matter of, government at work, that we allow the public to comment, as ridiculous as we may think some of the comments are, that we have to consider all of this in making these very important decisions about the livelihood of peace officers in the state of California. So thank you for your time.
And Maria, I have to chuckle when you say that's all I have, because it is what you've taken on is such an enormous endeavor, and you've been stellar at it. And we all really appreciate that. You're reinventing the wheel daily. We get that. Thank you so much. Questions? Yes, please, Commissioner.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. One, the training for the board that the commissioners can attend to, will there be a separate training for us that we understand fully what our role will be when and if a case gets to us?
At this point, there's not a commission-specific training scheduled. However, within the board training itself, it will talk about the stages of adjudication before this government body. So it will be what the board's responsibility is and what the commission's responsibility is. And so since that is part of the training, I think it would be important for commissioners that are interested and want to really take a more, I would say, thoughtful look at how that process is going to unfold, that we afford that to the commissioners. And again, it's a public meeting, so every commissioner can attend. It's going to be something that we need to hold in a public forum.
Before you go on, let me comment. I think that's a great idea. And I think that because you are going to need to understand what the expectations are for all of you. And if it doesn't become too much, I would suggest that such a training be created. Because this commission will be taking on the very serious role of decertification recommendation. And I think there should be, when you have time to create it, very specific training for fellow commissioners. I assume that was the point you were making, Commissioner Braun.
It is, Chair Dudley. We all take this very seriously, as do you, and the work that you have done so far has been amazing, and that all of the post staff has done to make this happen, because it seemed like an unsurmountable hurdle when this legislation came forward, and yet here we are. We're doing it. You're doing it. And I appreciate that. And I just want to make sure that when a case comes before us as a commission, that we get it right, and that we have all of the tools available to us, and that we're making all the right decisions and following all the right rules, so that we're doing our job and making sure that we're making the right decisions when these cases come to us, because they will come, and we want to get them right. So I appreciate that.
It's a great suggestion.
And then my second question was for hiring. What hurdles, what obstacles you have in recruiting the people that you need, and how can we support you?
Spread the word. I think the challenge just right now is across the state. It's not unique to Post, but you know, a lot of state agencies right now are struggling to get employees attracted to the state. I think in some regard, the economy kind of taking the turn that it's taken, as unfortunate as it is, will be in our favor, because people will be drawn to the stability, the retirement, you know, the predictability of state employment. So I'm hoping that we're able to attract more employees. I think we have a significant hurdle with the law enforcement consultants, because most of these people are coming to a second career. And so, you know, we're located here in Sacramento, and the work that we're doing is very conducive right now to being in an environment where we can work together, especially as we're trying to figure out what this process looks like, to make sure the integrity, the consistency, the reliability is there. I think that is a challenge, that people are unwilling to relocate essentially for second careers. And that's why opening up the retired annuitant option, I think, will be advantageous. As Manny mentioned, we think we have 8 in the hopper right now that we can look at. And that will be helpful for us, at least in the interim, to try to close the gap between the number of positions we have to fill. But it really does come down to word of mouth. As you encounter your colleagues and talk to folks about opportunities, it's a great opportunity. I know we have a number of LECs here that can talk about, you know, how beneficial it's been for them to have this opportunity, whether it's a second career or not, and participate in making the law enforcement profession that much better. So if you would all spread the word, that would be tremendously helpful.
On the retired annuitants, maybe Manny can answer this better. Or is there a push to change the restrictions on retired annuitants? Because that's something we're also talking about at the Cal Sheriff's level, about the 960 hours and the limitations. Because it makes it really hard for, especially now when it's hard to recruit anybody in law enforcement. If we had that change, I don't know if that's a push that Post is looking for or not.
I have not heard of any entity formally asking CalPERS to change that rule, or some state legislator to change that rule, but that definitely hampers us. It's not just Post. Colleagues at DOJ, you know, when they've been doing the 1506 investigations, have been trying to recruit individuals from other law enforcement agencies. And my understanding from them is they've been challenged, because everybody is coming from a PERS agency, and for Post, it's not a public safety position. So it's a significant pay cut for any peace officer potentially to come here. So a lot are retired, and PERS retirement impacts that. We're in Sacramento, so there are very few non-PERS agencies here. That is the biggest stumbling block. The non-PERS agencies are Sacramento County Sheriff's Department and Contra Costa County Sheriff's Department. For the most part, the rest are PERS. So we're hoping that at least we can get some retired annuitants. There's a ton of them here in this area. Historically, we weren't asking for retired annuitants, but for this we will. There's another challenge that the state is putting some limitations in the PERS board on how long they can work, the 960 hours. Now there's some discussion about limiting them to two years work maximum. So it makes it a significant challenge for us if that were to be lifted, that would be terrific. We'd have a ton of people we could hire. But that is the biggest challenge. We've had a lot of questions and we've had a lot of internal discussions about, for instance, LAPD is non-PERS, LA Sheriff's non-PERS, and Fresno County, most of them are non-PERS. Can they come on board as retired annuitants and just work from home? We've had a lot of those discussions personally, and I know not everybody's in agreement, and I don't know where it'll end up, but I think they should be here part of the time to hear all of this discussion and be part of the team, as well as I think it's only fair to the individual that's going through potential revocation that a team of people engage in those conversations as opposed to somebody working out of their residence somewhere in the state of California, kind of making some initial judgment calls. That is hindering us as well, that we're requiring them to come here, part of the time. We do offer, a hybrid work schedule for them. In terms of the non-LEC folks, the professional staff, that is the majority that keeps everything going. We also have significant challenges, just like the rest of the state. It's shocking at times where you call people for an interview, they don't show up. I mean, that's a common theme. I've never seen anything like that where you have an interview scheduled at 3 o'clock and they don't even come to the interview. So we're challenged all around. We definitely have more professional staff candidates than LEC candidates. That's, I think, where we're hurting the most.
I just want to add to both of their comments. State agencies' salaries can be notoriously low as compared to county salaries, and that's been a problem that I've seen as the commissioner, as a chair since 2016. So I think big picture, we need to take a look at those salaries. The other thing is, in addition to talking about posts to people so that we can help the recruitment effort, it's also a matter of each of you who are heading law enforcement agencies to continue to talk about the great work law enforcement is doing, whether it's on social media or public gatherings, because that raises the level, like an ocean swell, of why people want to be a part of this great team. So that's my suggestion. Anything else? Yes, please. Chief Gordon, Commissioner Gordon.
So I believe I've asked this question before, but since you brought up the PRA issue, I'd like a little more clarification on this particular subject and really where we're at and we think we're at legally. As a commissioner and as a chief, I have a deep concern over, we're going to be submitting serious misconduct allegations to post before we've had an opportunity to investigate. And like you said, that may have serious repercussions in terms of our ability to do fair and impartial investigation for both sides. So I really like to know really where we're at legally in a legal opinion on where that stands as of right now and today.
Thank you. And it is a very important issue, obviously. And one of our major concerns when SB 2 was enacted, because you can imagine, all of you as law enforcement professionals, you've seen what these IA files look like. They're massive, they're voluminous. There's a lot of very sensitive data in there. There are video files, there are audio files, there could be death photos, there's addresses, there's victim information. There may be information about misconduct by other officers who are not necessarily the subjects of the particular IA that you're reviewing. So, and then when you imagine that we have over 600 law enforcement agencies in California, they're going to be submitting this information to post. We recognize that this is going to be a massive volume of very sensitive data. So there's a kind of a multi-pronged approach that I think the commission is taking hopefully until we can get a legislative fix. And I can explain to you what a good legislative fix would be if it would be possible for us to get it. But the multi-pronged approach is that initially, we are not asking the law enforcement agencies to dump massive amounts of voluminous amounts of paper on us. One of the reasons is the PRA concern. So we have a system that's been put into place where the law enforcement agencies are going to notify the Division of the nature of the allegation, just the basic information, you might call it a cover page, without providing, unless asked, the backup detail. And that will allow, and certainly we're asking for no videos or photos to be shared until or unless we ask for them. The idea is that the belief is that there are going to be a significant number of those, and the division, of course, will be going through them and doing what you might call a triage to determine which ones warrant the initial investigation, and then obtaining those files and going through them. Once we do have possession of the files, and then they are a public record, which would be in the possession of Post, then it does raise the issue under the law of what happens if we get a PRA request. And the problem is, at the moment, we are at a point where our legal obligations with respect to PRA and the question of exemptions in the context of SB2 is not 100% clear under existing law. I'm sure you're aware that if a PRA request comes into your own agency for a police misconduct file, some of them are now subject to disclosure. They're not protected under the PITCHIS laws anymore, under 832.7 and 832.8 after Senate Bill 1421. So when those come in, those are presumably public. But I'm sure you've all had the circumstance where you look at the file and you know you have to produce it, but it still takes a significant amount of work to go through the file and do the redactions. And of course, we've been litigating the question of what redactions apply and which ones don't under Senate Bill 1421 for a couple of years now. So there are those issues, even if it's a file that is subject to production under 1421. We have another layer of complexity in that we are a regulatory agency. We are doing a licensing investigatory procedure. And so we will be having that effectively in an investigatory file. And so there are a number of exemptions that we could invoke with respect to a PRA request if it came in. Having said that, it is not 100% clear that every trial court in California would agree if there was a motion brought, there was a contested PRA, we asserted the exemptions, and someone took the position that we would need to produce all of that information. If that happened and that ruling did come through, and we had warehouses full of material that we would have to be working through to redact those pages, it would be an extraordinary, massive amount of work that really Post should not be doing. And that really what we need is a law that very clearly lists as an exemption under 6254 of the Government Code, which is the provision that lists exemptions to production under the PRA. We need a very clear exemption that says that the files and materials in the possession of the division are not subject to production, and that anybody seeking those can go to the original investigating agency. Because as Anne Marie said, it is very difficult for us as a third party in possession of the file to know with the sort of clarity that the agency knows in terms of what information in that file needs to be redacted, that a victim or witness request confidentiality, who is who in the case, is somebody a confidential informant or not, all those things the agency knows much better than we do without a significant amount of work. So really, I'm sorry, I've gone on for a long time, but kind of the bottom line is we're aware of the issue. We're trying to mitigate it until or unless we can get some PRA legislation passed that will clearly exempt us. If we do, then it takes a huge problem off of our plates, and we don't have to worry about the significant manpower expense of having to deal with responding to the PRA requests. So the bottom line is, I'm certain that the PRA requests will come in. We'll be responding to them. And if there is litigation, then the litigation will be battled in the superior courts and ultimately the courts of appeal to see what happens until or unless we get either a definitive ruling from the California Supreme Court or we get a legislative exemption. So sorry for the long legal answer, but I don't know how else to answer it.
And this is why I think we're in such great hands with Toby. I leaned in and listened to everything he had to say. And there's no way he could have said it in a short the helm.
So I
Questions about that?
appreciate the explanation. No more needed. Uh, But I do have a follow-up for Manny. Do we know if anyone is championing the necessary legislative, I guess, cleanup, so to speak, that would be needed to address this issue?
Yes, the answer is yes. We have been working inside the Capitol with the entities that are involved on the specific issues in great detail. I think we have some traction. I think hopefully it'll get resolved. The question is the timing of it. I think everybody seems to be in agreement that this is going to be a huge problem for us, that we will not be, as I've said, we will not be decertifying individuals. We will be responding to Public Records Act requests come January 1 or January 2. So we do have some traction, and we are having almost weekly discussions about it inside the Capitol to try to get it resolved. And I think we will. It's a matter of timing. Yes.
Thank you.
Time I will call upon, thank you, Bureau Chief Newmeyer and Law Enforcement Consultant Bill Baldwin, Training Program Service Bureau, to provide us a report regarding the Quality Assessment Program. Thank you, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, all. I'm Brad Newmeyer from the Training Program Services, newly appointed Bureau Chief. First time talking in front of you, so it's a pleasure to be here. This is my law enforcement consultant, Bill Baldwin, who's the manager of the Quality Assessment Program. We provide this report for you just to have an understanding of the actual workings of the program and some gaps we've discovered, and want to continue the program as it stands. And we're always looking for input to make it better. So this is how we go. So mission on the Peace Officer Standards and Training is to continue to enhance professionalism in law enforcement and serving its community. The Quality Assessment Program is contractually managed by the South Bay Regional Public Safety Consortium under a contract, which provides third-party validation that presenters are delivering the best training possible to California law enforcement. The South Bay Program Manager, in collaboration with post staff, Bill Baldwin here, is responsible for assigning quality assessors to selected courses. Historically, only courses in the post catalog were selected for assessment. During discussions with the program manager and Bill, we identified a gap in that some agencies don't list their courses in the catalog. If it's an agency-specific course for the agency personnel at an agency facility, oftentimes they don't need to advertise it to the public at large, so they just put their own training on for their own agency. We have identified that as a gap and have instructed the program to send assessors out to those courses as well, because it was a blind spot that we had and we didn't see what they were actually doing. So we've opened up the program to review those cases as well, or those courses as well. We usually respond when there is an issue with the course from the catalog and now to the courses that aren't in the catalog. Another common reason for selecting a course for a quality assessment is response to an external complaint. Could be through a commission member, could be from post staff, it could be from a law enforcement consultant or a regional representative. When they're received, we forward those to the South Bay manager, who sends an assessor out to assess the course based on that complaint. Once the manager notifies the presenters that a course has been selected for a QAP, post provides the manager with the course outline, the hourly distribution, the safety plan, the budget, and instructor resumes, which are all the pieces of the certification of a course. The assessor will review those items, ensuring the course outline and lesson plan, if provided, adhere to legislative or regulatory requirements. The safety plan appears reasonable, the hourly distribution is complete, and the course budget is reasonable before assessing the course. So they review the certification documents before going out to the course. The majority of the assessors in the program are graduates of our Instructor Development Institute Master Instructor Certification course. The time required to complete the final stage of MICC is typically 10 to 12 months and involves the creation of numerous specific areas that include a course of instruction, student learning outcomes, student learning activities, and a lesson plan, just to name a few. Once a course is validated, the student is required to pilot the approved peer-reviewed course Only personnel that have completed the MICC course are actively working in the latter stages of the MICC program are used as assessors in the QAP program. So all the QAP assessors have a working knowledge of what is expected in delivering a post-certified course in a way that post expects it to be with the information required and in a way that's acceptable to adults as learners. The assessors assigned with the provided course information assess the course. And many courses, depending on the length, have several instructors during the course of instruction. When you get to the statistics, you'll see it's usually 2.5 to 1 or 3 to 1 instructors to courses because there's multiple courses depending on the length of the course. If it's a short course of 2 or 4 hours, it might just be one instructor. If it's an 8-hour course, there might be 10. Every single instructor involved in that teaching gets an assessment from an assessor at the program. Upon completing the assessment, the assessments returned to the manager at South Bay who forwards them to Bill. Bill reviews them. And if there are issues with the course, that could be regulatory issues, such as missing resumes or incorrect formatting in the outline. Those will be addressed in a letter. Also, they could involve ratings of the instructors as either unacceptable or needs improvement. If anything's identified as a regulatory or a presentation issue, Bill will prepare a letter in my name. We send it to the course coordinator, and they have 30 days to send us back a plan on how to remedy those issues that are selected or that are pointed out. If we don't receive a response from them in 30 days, or they give a sufficient plan on how to fix those issues, we'll actually put the course in modification, which disallows them from putting on any further presentations till they've answered our concerns and our issues appropriately. And we believe that they're going to fix the issues that were identified. From April 1st, since the pause that we had early in the year through June 30th of this year, 20 courses were assessed by the QAP. Of those 20 courses, 51 instructors received quality assessment reviews. 10 courses required no corrections. The remaining 10 courses that identified deficiencies, and all presenters agreed to correct the identified instructional regulatory deficiencies. 2 of the 10 courses were placed into modification until the deficiencies were corrected. From July 1st, the beginning of the fiscal year, to November 9th of this month, 28 courses were assessed by the QAP. Of those 28 courses, 105 instructors received quality assessment reviews. 9 courses required no corrections. Of the 19 courses that had identified deficiencies, all presenters agreed to correct those structural regulatory deficiencies. 3 courses were placed into modification, 2 due to unacceptable instructor performance, which led to the presenter removing those instructors, and the last for a non-response from the presenter. And the QAP process provides a third-party validation, an in-depth review of both of instructor performance, instructional methodologies, course curriculum, safety policies employed during post-training. That's the current status of the program, and we'll open up any questions you might have regarding the program. We're here for you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
It's varied. It could be small regulatory issues. We are a regulatory agency, and if you have a incorrect instructor resume or the outline doesn't match exactly what they're teaching, those are regulatory issues, but they're not major misses. The biggest thing I've seen since I've been in the program for the last 3 months is the instructor performance issues that are apparent. And it's good to note that an 80-hour course, if you've seen in the paperwork provided with you all, the evaluations are very complete. And even if an instructor meets standards, the mentoring piece of this program is that there still could be suggestions for improvement, even for an instructor that does very well. People that need improvement, we need a answer back, and unacceptables have been, based on the presenter's reaction, removed from the program as soon as we left and the problems were identified by the program.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anything else? Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
As this was the last item on the consent agenda, is there a motion to approve the consent items?
Motion, Donlin.
Second? Any questions, comments? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing nothing, the motion passes. Okay, now we're going to, pardon me? Unanimously. Thank you. Since You just throw that at me for the first time, okay. Last 6 years, I haven't been saying that, but I'm ready to say that today forward. Since there was no finance committee meeting this morning, I will call upon the Bureau Chief, Cheryl Smith, Administrative Service Bureau, to provide us with financial report for fiscal year 2022-23. I've renamed you Crystal, which is interesting.
I like that name. Crystal Smith.
I like Crystal. That fits too.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Madam Chair. I'm just going to give an overview of where we're currently stand with the budget and spending. As of November 8th, we've expensed approximately $30 million of the $110 million that was allocated to the budget. We've expended approximately $22 million of the $45 million from the state penalty fund. $1 million of that was for standards, $11 million for training, $7.8 million for peace officer training, and $2.4 million for administration. We have expended a little over $7 million of the $62 million from the general fund. $772,000 has went to standards. Sorry. I don't know how to work this. So this is state penalty fund. And from the general fund, we expended a little over $7 million of the $62 million, $772 million for standards, $4.6 million for training, $798,000 for peace officer training, and $1.1 for administration. And then does anybody have any questions in regards to any of the expenditures for current year? Then for contracts for 21-22 fiscal year, the commission approved a little over $19 million in contracts. Of that, we put into contract 17.6 million was executed. As of November 8th, we invoiced a total of 11.2 million. Of those, we had a few contracts that were extended for time. Those included the Institute of Criminal Investigations for LAPD was extended until December 31st of 2022. A principal policing train the trainer course consolidation development with CSU Long Beach was extended until March 31st of 23. Museum of Tolerance was extended until June 30th of 23. And then the Peace Officer Standards Accountability Training course for the advisory board was extended until 12/31 of 22. Also, there was a Supervisory Leadership Institute with CSU Long Beach that's been extended until February 28th of 23. And then for fiscal year 22-23 is for contracts. The commission approved approximately $23.5 million in contracts. Of that, we have executed 20.1 million. And currently, as of November 8th, we invoiced approximately $2.4 million. Does anybody have any questions on where we stand with the money that we've spent so far?
Seeing no questions, I want to thank you very
you.
much. And at this time, I will call upon Bureau Chief Brad Newmeyer, Training Program Services Bureau, to provide us with a report on training contract extensions. Yes, please.
I might just add one thing on the discussion of the current budget. Most of you are probably to some extent following the news of reduced revenues in the state. And right now, the Ledge Analyst Office is estimating probably about a $24 billion decline in anticipated revenues for 22-23 and 23-24 ongoing. Now, does that mean not materialize? It may. It also means that would eat up the entire anticipated state general fund revenue surplus. So cuts will likely be forthcoming from someplace. It's been a pretty heady budget years the last few years, and we appear to be heading for not so heady times. The LAO has also estimated that if the recession comes sooner, that 24 billion could double, which is a pretty significant hit. And it goes on for a couple of years with probably minimal, $7 to $10 billion revenue reductions going forward. So it's just something to keep in mind as Post goes through this huge expansion with this huge workload expansion. No reason to think that Post will be on the cutting block in any ways, but it's something to keep in mind as we look at these expenditure totals.
Thank you, Commissioner Long. Anything else? Okay.
I'm back. Thanks for having me back. I was asked to specifically talk about the training program services programs that were extended and the actual reasons for those. The SB2 decertification course is the one that's been talked about more than once here. It's the course for the advisory board. The process is all but complete. We're just waiting on the assignment of those board members. So the contract was extended through the government training agency till middle of next year to allow us time to actually put on the pilot and provide that training to the board for the government training agency. Second contract that was extended was the Sherman Block Supervisory Leadership Institute. It was extended for time until 2/28 of 23 due to COVID-19 restricting the presenter's ability to present courses and lack of attendance by the field, and to expend the contract monies from the previous year contract. The fiscal year 22-23 was executed, and TPS does not expect a contract extension in the current year's contract. So whatever monies were from last year will be expended, and whatever expended this year will go back to a normal contract process next year. For the principal policing train the trainer course consolidation, we were actually almost ready to finish at the end of last fiscal year, but due to restriction of travel by Post at the end of the last fiscal year, it was pushed off and extended just for time. No additional monies to complete the work for the principal policing train the trainer course consolidation during this fiscal year using last year's monies because they were unable to travel into last year to complete their work. The Museum of Tolerance Tools for Tolerance contract was extended through 6/30 of 23 due to the closure of MOT during COVID-19. As of 11/29, there's approximately $300,000 remaining in last year's contract. And we expect the monies to be expended within the next 30 to 60 days, and they'll move on to this year's contract to spend the monies in this year's contract through the end of the year, the fiscal year. And the Los Angeles Police Department Institute of Criminal Investigations contract was executed late due to an attempt to amend a previous year's contract. The extension requires 17 course presentation, which was their normal year scope, to be completed by 12/31 of 22 this year. And then we adjusted the scope from the executed contract for this year that was executed in November to end at the end of the fiscal year with a reduced scope of 9 courses to be completed by the end of this fiscal year. So all these contracts are lined up to just start as normal next year with no contract extensions expected.
Thank you. Any questions? Comments? Okay, so now we'll move on to contracts. We will be reviewing and voting on only one contract. The contract is for the Wellness and Mental Health Program to support officer wellness initiatives in the state. Post is looking to enter into a contract with the University of California, San Diego to support the development and evaluation of the Wellness and Mental Health Program. At this point, I'd like to call upon law enforcement consultant Michael Dallasay, Management Council and Project Bureau, to provide us a report regarding this contract. Welcome back, Michael.
Thank you. Good afternoon again, commissioners and Post colleagues. Just gonna wait here until the PowerPoint gets finalized. Before that gets going, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. As I stated, I'm new to Post. June 1st was my first day, so this was quite an undertaking for me, just learning the processes. And I appreciate the questions. I'll front load it there, Commissioner Long, that have been relayed my way. It really has exposed potential blind spots, and really I feel it's developed a much better presentation and a clear picture. I'll tell you that I came from the Alameda County Sheriff's Office. as a lieutenant. And the reason I say that is because I was a tenured member of our wellness program. I really was sold on the concept when I was helped by our wellness program. And I'm sure many of our law enforcement professionals in here understand the benefits of wellness. So let's talk about the post-organizational wellness and resilience. I'm sure many of you are familiar with POST's mission statement. It's really brief, but I believe that it provides a vision, and it's essential to review this and throw it in your back pocket as we take this journey through these few slides. I'll read it verbatim. POST's mission is to continually enhance the professionalism of California law enforcement in serving its communities. Everything we've done to this point has been intentional and deliberate. It has been fiscally responsible and will be third-party validated. Taking us back to December of last year, Director Alvarez and Madam Chair Dudley, she had a big push, as did Director Alvarez and AED Sandoval, on wellness. So in December, this time last year, that's when we started getting some traction. And in January of this year, a budget change proposal was submitted by Assistant Executive Director Maria Sandoval, which I learned earlier was done when she was on vacation, because that is just how passionate she was on this. And I can tell you, sitting here before you, that I am just as passionate. So excuse me if I begin to talk too quickly. During that time, once the budget change proposal was submitted, POST was awarded $5 million July 1 of this year. So we're going well into 6 months on having this funding, and a lot of work has been done on the back end, which you'll have a clearer picture of by the time our session's finished here. So what are the components of this endeavor? Well, it's to expand or establish wellness programs within law enforcement organizations throughout the state of California. Because as we spoke earlier, we heard from the sheriff, retention and recruitment are huge. And I was a part of a lot of those incidents that the sheriff spoke of earlier today, being from fires to working alongside Commissioner Donnellan's agency during the Oakland protests. So what are we aiming for here? We're aiming to identify our stakeholders as, let me back up here. I'm so passionate about this. You thought I was kidding about that. Okay. One of the factors that were laid out by Andrew Mendonca, my predecessor, was that POST needs to deliver some state-of-the-art wellness programs that will not only be tailored to the individual, the organization, but also affect the community, impact the community, and establish some community engagement. I'll let you take a look at the budgetary language. As you see it here before you, officer wellness programming, I will tell you while you read that the BSCC received $50 million, which is similar to our endeavor, but it is different in the sense that it is a one-time disbursement. Ours is $5 million. We are going to have metrics in place to record and measure the outcomes. So there's a little bit about the background. Continued is, this is going to take a look at the physical, emotional, and mental health of our law enforcement professionals. And you'll see on the following slides, this is not just for police officers. This is going to be, as we established earlier today, organizational wellness and resilience, because I think you cannot have one without the other if we're trying to accomplish, the idea of law enforcement. And we talked about becoming a part of the inspiration to become a law enforcement officer or professional, I should say. With an emphasis on officer wellness, procedural justice, and community relations, as we spoke of earlier. What's unique about this program is, although I was a member of our peer support or wellness team at the Alameda County Sheriff's Office, we didn't have an infrastructure that would record the qualitative, quantitative, and or biometric data. So I did some digging on my own and really consulted with some of my predecessors and even interested third parties and said, what kind of biometric data can we capture? So we have self-reporting, agency reporting, it could be heart rate, it could be BMI, it could be, this is all done with consent. So the participants will have a very clear picture of what is going to be recorded and what could potentially be reported. And part of this process, a couple months back, my partners and I developed a survey, which we put out through the entire state, just to garner some interest, see how we can best spearhead this effort. And you'll see here on the top, the pie chart, there's 75% that do have wellness programs. And then there's another 25 to it's maybe 27% that are either unaware, it's the green, or orange, they do not have a wellness program, in large part because of funding. See here. And then on the bottom pie chart, that is the blue represents the responses, and you'll see that there are 485 a week ago. As of this morning, or I'm sorry, last week, there were just over 500 responses, and this was all voluntary. You'll see in the blue portion of the pie chart on the bottom, those are professionals who believe that a wellness program would be of benefit to their agency, and the green is maybe. And with some elaboration, I came to learn that the green really is because they don't have an existing wellness program. They don't know what that would look like. Let's see, a collaborative approach. We talked about this in a few slides back. This is different in the sense that it's not just officer wellness. Having been a lieutenant, I've worked for people and I've had people work for me. And I think it's important to have rank aside, because if we're really trying to capture a holistic approach to wellness, I think it needs to be inclusive, organizational, and again, innovative. So what I propose before you today is really nothing new in the sense that our partnership with the University of California, San Diego Centers for Integrative Health, we've worked with them in the past, as some of you may recall, with the integrative grant program. It's a mouthful, sorry, and Centers for Counsel. That program was highly successful. As you'll see, I would encourage you to look on the Center for Counsel website to see just how impactful that was on officers and law enforcement professionals' career paths, personal lives. The reason why we chose UCSD in this is because they are so diverse, they're dynamic, and their methods have been all validated. They provided reports in the past to show what works, what doesn't. And again, going back to, I mentioned it earlier this morning, but internally we did a SWOT, some of our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that are ongoing, not only within post-implementation of wellness, but then organizational wellness at our law enforcement partners. What works for them, what doesn't, what can we capitalize on? Some of the needs and deliverables, I'll really let you take a look at that. This is what we set out to do. This is what's going to give us our vision, and this is how we establish our goals and our objectives. And this will be different because with the mandatory overtime program, I heard someone mention earlier, we have flexible delivery, whether it's in person, remote, synchronous or asynchronous. And as I mentioned earlier about UCSD being one of the top 15 research universities worldwide. Here are our goals. And I put in 100,000 officers because out of 680 plus law enforcement organizations, we aim to target in the first couple of years, 60 agencies, identify 60 agencies and impact various officers. So I'll refer to my notes here in a couple slides. But what are the threats? This is the last part of the SWOT assessment. What are the threats? I think we can all attest to some wins with wellness, but then we can also recall some not so great experiences with our wellness programs. We have the participation apprehension. However, we're going to mitigate that with having validated, credible, professionals with real world experience, both clinical and also, as Chief mentioned earlier, boots on the ground. Back to that. And then, of course, ongoing funding, fiscal limitations, because this is a 3-year program. But part of that is in phase 3 of our process, we're going to assist these agencies with identifying mechanisms for funding. And again, the sustainability, we're going to present a final report, which the commission will be provided at the end of our program. So third-party validation, I was told this is key, because having been new to post, I know it is we do a great job of having our subject matter experts come in. This is different in the sense that we solicited input from researchers, from non-law enforcement professionals, and even from the financial aspect. And then there's a couple of things on the community's benefit, because it will have a ripple effect. A well officer, a well organization will result likely, at least in my time as in law enforcement, I've seen that a healthy officer will have healthier interactions. We talked about this de-escalation earlier. Absenteeism will be reduced. And the last one I think is really key. Programs are developed to strengthen the bond between our communities and the law enforcement professionals. Here's a brief timeline. We can go into this in detail later, but that's what we're prepared to do as soon as today. Okay, Commissioner Long, this is your slide. This is the intent to disperse, sir. $4.24 million is what we have allocated or are prepared to allocate in contract with UCSD. And I think it's important to note that this is over the course of 3 years. And I know the amount is for $5 million. But for those of you that may not know in the room, it is prudent and wise to allow for any overages or any contingencies. As I mentioned earlier this morning, I met with Jared Sadie of Centers for Counsel, who is not with UCSD, but it was a part of the innovative grant program. There we go. And he is on board and willing to do this. So this would require a separate contract later down the line. I think before I get into this picture, this just ties it all together. Because we talked about LD14 in the academy. We talked about some wellness, when you go to supervisor school or SLI. But really after that, what happens to wellness? The community's expectations don't change from the first day you get on the job versus your 20th or 30th year. So we have no excuse. I'll go into this picture and I'll end it. But this is, for those of you that may recall, this is Deputy Perez. I met him last year. This was September of last year, 2021, at one of the sheriff's conferences. And he and his partner were ambushed in Los Angeles County. You may remember that at the transit station down there in October of 2020. So not even a year later, he is back to work. And mind you, he was shot in the face, left for dead, and his partner was done the same way. But when I met him, this is his demeanor. All smiles. He had a German Shepherd, and I just thought he was a canine officer. And he introduced himself like, "Hey, I'm so-and-so," and I recalled his name, but I didn't quite put it together until people started pointing fingers and whispering in my ear who he was. And I said, "Holy smokes, come here. I got to give you a hug." So I gave this guy a hug, not knowing him from anywhere else. And I said, "How do you do it? Like, why do you do it?" He said, I'm fighting to get back as soon as I can because I love what I do." I said, "Okay, I get that. I understand that you had 14 months on the job when this happened. You're young, you're healthy, you're fit, but how did you get through it?" And he said, "Well, I couldn't have done it without the support of my family, my friends, and the agency. So I later came to find out that LASD has a pretty robust wellness program. And I think this man right here is the epitome of wellness and resilience. So I'll leave you with one final thought. You know, people are always looking for someone to follow. And I think as post members and as commission members, we are those leaders who are always looking to serve. That concludes my presentation. I'd love to open it up for any questions.
I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
My comment is, thank you for all the hard work you put into creating that PowerPoint. Thank you for the excellent presentation. But even more so, thank you for your passion and your vulnerability. This is one of those topics in law enforcement that is critical, that is life-sustaining or life-ending for people. And if we don't have leaders like you with the passion you have, we'll never be successful. So thank you very much.
Thank you,
Manny?
ma'am. It's my honor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And if I may add a little bit of context to this, we were prepared to have a finance committee meeting. That was a references to Commissioner Long to have a discussion to really get the support of the finance committee to, give us the authority to engage in a contract. Just to give this some context. So one, we really thank the administration. They're the ones that supported and pushed for the wellness money to be awarded to Post from the very beginning. We had a lot of machinations as to how we were going to put together a program. And we came up with a plan, which I think we've discussed at previous commission meetings, to have wellness workshops specific to individual agencies, that we would target specific agencies who made an application to Post to identify what their wellness issues were at that department, that they were very specific to that department, and that we wanted to work with academia to address those wellness concerns. Therefore, we wrote that into the budget change proposal, and we are trying to partner with academia. One, as you all know, we get a lot of resistance that, hey, it's just a bunch of cops that come up with this stuff, or how do you know that it's good if it's just you guys doing it? And law enforcement isn't necessarily, this isn't this area, this area is not their area of expertise. So we wanted to partner with academia to do this. The request that we have today is to engage in a contract which is not finalized with the University of California at San Diego. The scope of work will be very specific as to what their responsibilities are under the contract to work with those specific agencies, as Mike articulated, 60 agencies, to address their wellness issues at that agency, to provide a report at the end, to develop best practices, and to work with us to write a report to the legislature when this is all over in 3 years. That is what we're asking for today, for the authority to engage in a contract with the University of California. If that doesn't work out, then we want to come back and get authority to work with another academic institution. We have been working with UCSD over the course of several weeks to finalize a verbal agreement as to what that contract will look like for the development of these wellness workshops at individual agencies. It's not finalized yet. If it doesn't come through, then we would have to come back. But that's our intent today. It is 3-year money. It sounds like it's a lot of time but for us, 3 years is fast. Obviously 6 months are already over. And this is our goal, is just to get the authority to move forward with a contract with UC San Diego, if possible. If not, then we'll come back and propose it again. If we can't reach an agreement with them, we'd come back again. And we'd be happy to show you the contract once we get it finalized. But time is kind of the essence, and that's where we're at.
Any further questions or comments on this? Yes, Commissioner Gordon.
Very much in support of this. It's very much needed. I appreciate the hard work, and I actually appreciate academia being brought into the equation. I think that's super important in terms of content and legitimacy of the program. And I would be honored actually to make the motion to move this forward, because I think this is extremely important. Not only is it part of the national narrative, should be part of the narrative in all of our individual agencies. So.
Well, momentarily, I'll give you the honor. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, let me just make a clarifying statement. If the contract up for approval could be considered a conflict of interest for you, please abstain from the contract. If there's a motion to, okay, so one moment, so we're just going on to here, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so is there a motion, Commissioner Gordon, to approve the Management Counseling and Projects Bureau Wellness and Mental Health Contract?
Yes, there is.
And second? We're doing a roll call on this?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Nunez, please do a roll call.
Barcelona. Braun. Brazil. Donaldin. Dudley,
Yes.
Yule, Gordon, Long, Marsh, Nieto. Yes. O'Rourke.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, there were no no's, so that motion does carry. And Commissioner Alvarez, excuse me, Executive Director Alvarez.
Okay, thank you again for the vote. And Madam Chair, it genuinely is unfair that we weren't able to present this to the Finance Committee. But I do promise you we'll bring it back in March as to the status, in June as to the status, and we'll present the contract to you. I know there's some questions that we've had and Jeff's had, Commissioner Long's had, and that we've had, what's in the contract? This is a first, right? It's easy to say, hey, we need a contract for ICI homicide for LAPD because we've been doing it over and over. We know what the course is. We know how it's delivered. This is new. So there's a lot of unknowns. I promise we'll get back to you on all of that as to where we go with them at the next commission meeting in June. And I believe Commissioner Long has a question.
Yes, Commissioner Long.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the discussion is kind of centered here, maybe rightly, maybe not, on the value of wellness. I don't think anyone disputes it. I just don't think there's any information here at all about where the money's going, when it's going, who it's going to, why it's going to them, what the third party validation would be. And whenever a body, a commission, a legislative body is asked to approve contracts, we really should have some information. And with all due respect and with great support for the program and the goals, I think we can do both. I think we can also lay out, very concretely, here's what we'd like to see happen. We can acknowledge that things might not happen, but here's why we're going to UCSD. Here's when the money's going to go out. Here's who it's going to go out to. And if we don't have any sense of what our specific goals are, it's very hard to do a report or do a third party validation of something you don't really know what it is you're trying to do, except you're trying to get to the end. So I would just ask and hope that going forward with contracts, that we have a little bit more substance in terms of what we're dealing with the money, because contracts are where you get in trouble sometimes. Contracts are also can be where you really get earn some kudos and really with the third party validation. So I just asked going forward that we try to maybe put a little bit more meat on the bones of the things that we're asked to approve, not just the notion of wellness, which we all approve and we all want to see happen. That's all.
And
Those are my concerns that I shared with Michael and with Manny going forward, since we didn't have the finance meeting.
May I speak to that, Madam Chair? I'll keep it really brief. Yeah.
Sure.
I do have the scope of work here, but to avoid belaboring the point, we do have measurable objectives, which I was prepared to provide during the finance meeting, along with an itemized budget here, because I understand your concern. We should know absolutely where, and that's what a lot of my meetings have entailed. Where exactly is the state's money going? So thank you for expressing your concern, and I share that sentiment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thanks, Michael, for your work and passion.
You're very welcome. It's my privilege.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Commissioner Long. It does sound like that will be forthcoming at the next meeting. Okay, we're going to take now our afternoon break, and if we can be back here by 3:20.
You're a county.
I know it's not indicative of the amount of time, but we're a little less than halfway through the agenda. So I'd start thinking about 5:30 as a possibility, but let's see how the rest of it goes. Alternatively, we could all come back tomorrow. Okay, so let's see. The next one is we're going on to Administrative Service Bureau. Item D1 is a report on proposed changes to Commission Regulation 1015, reimbursement for training. Law enforcement consultant Steve Harding, Professional Conduct 4 Bureau, will provide a report on this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. So there's really two big parts to the revamp of this regulation, which hasn't been updated for 16 years, something like that. So the big one is we want to update the rates for reimbursement for travel. That's pretty self-explanatory. We're not really anything big on that one, is make sure people are getting reimbursed for their hotel and travel, or what the current rate is with Cal HR. The second aspect is when we were looking at TRRs, we noticed that nobody puts in for backfill reimbursement, which is allowed in regulation. Hardly anybody ever puts in for it. So what we decided to do was to do a survey to find out why nobody puts in for backfill reimbursement. The biggest reason that we found, there's a couple of reasons that the agencies expressed, is one, they just don't backfill. So if you got to send somebody training, there's nobody backfilling behind them. The other agencies also added that if somebody has to go to training and they're going to be required to backfill, they just won't send them to training. And then the other one was our regulation was pretty complicated in how to properly calculate backfill. So when I heard that, I reached out to the state controller's office, the people that do the audits of our reimbursement claims. And I asked them, I said, what are the top two things that agencies make mistakes on when it comes to reimbursement? It goes backfill calculation. And the other one was submitting for basic courses like the academy. Those are the top two that they make mistakes on. And so when you look at the regulation for calculating backfill, it is pretty complicated. So I understand why it's hesitant, because if they calculate it wrong, then they're gonna have to pay us back. And so I see why people are hesitant of that. So we decided to try to come up with another idea on getting people that money that's available for the plan 1 and 2 classes. This only applies to 2 plans, plan 1s and 2. So we came up with the idea of offsetting the actual officer or dispatcher's salary while they go to the class and travel. So they can actually get money back for the officer and not for a backfill. So the number we came up with, or the number I was able to find, was the $51.43. And that comes from the State of California Employee Development Department. And that's the median wage for patrol officers and patrol deputy sheriffs. And they use the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and there's a lot of things that they throw into that. And so that was the median wage. And that's where we decided to come up with that number to reimburse people instead of backfill. So to change backfill reimbursement to salary offset reimbursement. One of the things that you guys did receive a chart that broke down the courses by plans. You can see that we have roughly 5,226 courses certified. 3,370 of those are eligible for reimbursement, but only 274 are eligible for backfill or salary offset, depending on what we got to go. So it's not every class is going to get that. It's just certain classes are going to get that. And the regulation does outline what criteria those classes need to fall under before we'll give them a plan 1 or 2 to get backfill reimbursement. We do plan on that in reviewing those classes. We do realize we need to clean some of those up. So that number is going to get reduced considerably, the 274, because some of those classes are not meeting the criteria anymore. So we do need to change them back. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, Commissioner Braun.
Is there a limit, like a cap of how much money is available for the salary offset?
No. You mean overall in the budget, like
Yeah.
what we give? No.
Yes, Commissioner Nieto.
I do have a question. I know that you were talking about backfill salary. The calculations seem to be difficult for many of the agencies. The salary offset is it just going to be based on the number that you came up with, or is there going to be another formula that people aren't going to
No.
understand?
It's gonna be, if they want it, they're gonna get the 51.43 for every hour that that person is in class. Plus, they're gonna get up to 16 hours of travel. We give that right now with backfill reimbursement. So if you have to, it's a Tuesday through Thursday class, you got to travel 8 hours on Monday and Wednesday and Friday. You can put in up to 16 hours to get that back.
Commissioner Barcelona, did you have a question? No, Commissioner Long?
Yeah, just simply, it all seems like a great idea and makes a lot of sense. Do we have a handle on the cost? of What this would do if we were to implement this? Maybe Manny could address it, or Steve, I don't know, going forward for a fiscal year?
So I did come up with, I don't have an exact number. I have a worst case scenario number for you. So of those 274 classes, if every, and that's just 274 classes. So one class, a presenter could teach that one class 25 times throughout the year. And then, so the number is just how many courses are certified, not how many presentations are certified. So if we pulled every single presentation that was a plan 1 or 2, and those agencies ran every one of those presentations and maxed it out with the amount of students they can, and every student put in, we would be looking at $40 million. That's if everybody did all that. But if everybody did all that with backfill, it'd be more. They don't, and for different reasons.
May I, Madam Chair?
Please.
Okay. So yes, first of all, thank you to Steve. He's been working on this for a long time, for months and months, putting this together and really has dissected all of our TRRs and how we've been doing them historically. And one of the things that we talked about is we recognize that, or Steve has recognized there's certain things that shouldn't be plan 1s and 2s, that we need to pull them out of there. So that'll reduce the numbers, as Steve has mentioned. And then 2, we anticipate that we're potentially going to have some obstacles with getting this thing approved through the Office of Administrative Law, the Department of Finance and such. One, because as Commissioner Long mentioned earlier, the state budget may be taking a hit, as we're all reading in the press and hearing that it could be a lot, 25 or $50 billion. How is this going to be perceived? We look at it as we're not asking to spend more money. We're asking to have an efficient mechanism to distribute the monies that have been allocated to us. So as we've mentioned in the last 2 fiscal years, or the previous 2 fiscal years, yes, we've been allocated $34 million for local assistance reimbursement. And we've been returning approximately 20 million of the 34 million that we just haven't used, or that agencies haven't asked for reimbursement on. So this may be a more efficient means to get them that $34 million that's been allocated by the state to distribute to state, city, and county municipalities. So it may not go through. We may get some resistance on the back end, even if you all approve it. We recognize that. But that's our intention, to try to get the money out there a little bit easier for those departments.
Any other questions or comments? Because it's unfair to the agencies that they haven't been able to make use of this money, and this is going to be a very reasonable way potentially to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Did the advisory committee have any comments on this?
The advisory committee did not review this particular item, but I'm very supportive of it.
Good to know. Is there a motion to approve the proposed changes to Commission Regulation 1015 as described by the state in the staff report?
Nieto moves.
I'll second.
Okay.
Very sure.
Questions, comments? All those in favor? Is there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Okay, that motion passes
Unanimous.
Hmm?
Unanimous.
unanimously. Okay, next we're going to Basic Training Bureau. Item E1 is a report on a proposed pilot for Learning Domain 14, Officer Wellness and Basic Course. Law Enforcement Consultant Raymond Nandiago. Basic Training Bureau will provide a report on this item.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Following the wellness workshop in November 2020, post staff reviewed the existing basic course curriculum and determined that creating a new learning domain 14 dedicated to officer wellness would be the most appropriate method of delivery, rather than expanding on an existing learning domain. Based on the information gathered during the wellness workshop from subject matter experts from around the country, the top 5 wellness needs were established as the learning needs for the new domain. The learning needs for learning domain 14 officer wellness will include emotional intelligence, mental health, substance abuse, financial management, and resiliency. The minimum required hours for learning domain 14 officer wellness in the regular basic course and the specialized investigators basic course is 8 hours. The minimum required hours for modules 3, 2, and 1 are 1 hour, 2 hours, and 8 hours respectively. In May 2020.
I'm sorry, what was the last 8 hours?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
8 hours.
Please go on.
In May 2022, post staff convened 15 sworn and non-sworn subject matter experts for the first of 2 workshops at post headquarters. The purpose of this workshop was to develop the training and testing specifications and begin development on the student workbook along with an instructor guide. In September 2022, post staff reconvened the same subject matter experts for the second workshop at post headquarters. The purpose of this workshop was to fine tune and finalize the training and testing specifications and the student workbook and to further develop the instructor guide. Post staff would like to take a moment and recognize the significant contributions of these subject matter experts. Their time, hard work, and willingness to assist with the development of LD 14 officer wellness has been invaluable and is greatly appreciated. The group of subject matter experts consisted of 1 assistant chief, 1 captain, 1 lieutenant, 4 sergeants, 1 corporal, 2 officers, 2 deputies, 1 doctor of medicine, 1 PhD, and 1 licensed marriage and family therapist. 8 of the subject matter experts were instructors with representation from state, county, and municipal agency-based academies and college-based academies. There was almost an exact split from Northern California and Southern California, and 8 were women and 7 were men. As this new learning domain has never been presented statewide, post staff would request the approval to pilot learning domain 14 officer wellness at the following academies: Allen Hancock College, California Highway Patrol, Sacramento County Sheriff's Office, San Francisco Police Department, Los Angeles Police Department, San Diego Regional Public Safety Training Institute, and the San Joaquin Delta College for the modular format. These presenters are selected to gather feedback from diverse perspectives throughout the state. Recruits in the pilot classes will be provided with online feedback forms to solicit their input. A small group consisting of not more than 1 or 2 post staff and 1 subject matter expert will silently observe the presentations and then meet with the instructors afterwards for their feedback and debrief. All pilot presentations will be complete by spring 2022, by spring 2023, and which would allow post staff to review the overall feedback and report back to the commission at the June 2023 commission meeting. I'd like to open up for any questions.
A comment. I've spoken to many academy directors about this issue and about the presentation of this information. The standard answer to me has always been, oh, we do it throughout. And it's almost the last word that I paid attention, which is they threw it out. And now specifically focusing on this gives it, in my opinion, the status that it deserves. So thank you for recognizing that and for putting something like that together.
Thank you, ma'am.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Long.
Question, you guys probably know the answer to this real quickly. Those academies that you're using to pilot it, that would include rural officers as well that come into these more metropolitan areas for their training?
Yes, sir. Some of the colleges work regionally. as well as San Diego Regional. That's part of the reason why I was looking for those regional components as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Long. Anything else? Did the advisory committee have any comments on this item?
Madam Chair, on this item, we briefly discussed this item along with the other presentation on officer wellness, and the committee is very supportive of both of these projects. This one focusing at the beginning of an officer's career and the other focusing on their wellness throughout their career. Comments were made regarding these being one-time funds and concerns about the sustainability of that. And while I think it was the $5 million to post, $50 million from the BSCC that went to California agencies is good, that needs to be sustained as well. And I would like to also say, and we commented offline to Mike earlier on his presentation, both California Chiefs, Cal Sheriffs, and the International Chiefs Associations are also running pretty effective officer wellness programs. And when I heard the SME group here, I know that there were no chiefs or sheriffs involved. And I encourage the potential of reaching out to some of those organizations as well, who are doing a lot of work on officer wellness and can provide some important information, particularly related to the sheriff from Butte County, his comments earlier with regards to being culture change. And those are the people that will lead that culture change and be significant resources. So that's the comments from the advisory committee.
Thank you. Any other comments? Is there a motion to approve? Yes.
Just one quick comment to echo what Chief Salazar is talking about. The Caltriefs training symposium for March of 2023. That is actually the focus of the symposium. I'm on that committee that puts that symposium together. So the culture change is starting from the top. It's also got to come from the bottom down in terms of the academy. So I think it's both directions have to be working in the same way. So to his point, I think having that additional chief level so that we make sure we're all working together would be helpful. And with that, I'll make a motion to.
The one of the sheriffs I spoke with said, after I'd done a presentation on wellness and law enforcement and first responder, he took me aside in the hallway and he said, "No one ever asked me how I am." And he said, but I ask a lot of people how they are. And as we all know, if our leaders are embracing this concept, it's going to trickle down or in some ways trickle up. So thank you. And I understand you did make that motion. Is there a second?
Madam Chair, I just have a comment.
Yes, please.
As we move forward with wellness, and I know this is a very hot topic and very important to many, many people throughout organizations. If we do any future surveys, I just want to remind the commission that insurance companies, many of the cities are in polls, and they meet with their chiefs and sheriffs or whoever's got the poll to ask about what they're doing. And an example is a poll that I belong to. They put money into wellness. And so just included in surveys as we move forward, because monies are going to get tight, sounds like, as we go into the future years.
Excellent. Thank you.
Madam
Commissioner O'Rourke, did you want to say something? No, you just wanted to nod. Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
Commissioner Gordon, just for clarity for the record, the motion, as I understand it, is a motion to approve the proposed pilot for Learning Domain 14 as described in the staff report. Is that correct?
Yes, what you said.
Is there a second? Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes and it passes unanimously. So now on to Certification Bureau. Item F1 is a report on proposed changes to Commission Regulation 1052, requirements for course certification and more specifically course instructors. Bureau Chief Michelle Wheeler, Certification Bureau, will provide a report on this item. Welcome, Michelle.
Afternoon. I'm back. You guys are probably tired of seeing me every commission meeting. So this report is on proposed changes to Commission Regulation 1052, again, specifically to course instructors. We're putting forward two different options for you to consider with regard to the prohibition of peace officers who have had their certifications suspended or revoked by the commission or have surrendered them to the commission to prohibit them from being instructors in post-certified courses, as well as anybody who would be deemed ineligible based on Government Code 1029. So that would include personnel coming from out of state. What you see on your left-hand side, option A is a prohibition regardless. So if you've been suspended, if the commission has revoked the certification or you voluntarily surrendered your certification. What you see on the right should be option B. And that is if your certification has been revoked by the commission, if you've surrendered your certification to the commission, or only for the duration of your suspension, should the commission, not yours, a peace officer's suspension, should the commission issue a suspension rather than a decertification action. Both of these options also include a statement regarding the immediate temporary suspension of a certificate. So a certification, so that is when the executive director has the authority to issue an immediate temporary suspension pending the outcome of an investigation and a commission action. If the commission takes no disciplinary action against a peace officer certification, that peace officer is then restored back to the ability to teach in a post-certified course. If you would like, because it's kind of small up there, but it should be in front of you, I can read through each text if that is preferred for you.
You certainly can do that, but after each, just would you ask the commission if they have any questions?
Yes.
So then we could know at the end that there were no questions.
Yes.
Thank you.
So option A would be an amendment to 1052A5 to add an A and a B. And it would read, individuals shall not be permitted to instruct in a post-certified course if the person has become ineligible to hold office as a peace officer pursuant to section 1029 of the Government Code, or if their peace officer certification, 1, has been suspended by the commission, 2, has been revoked by the commission, or 3, was voluntarily surrendered to the commission. B reads, if an immediate temporary suspension does not result in a commission action, the individual may be reinstated as an eligible instructor in a post-certified course upon reinstatement of their certification. Are there any questions about that proposal? Okay, so option B is similar. It reads, individuals shall not be permitted to instruct in a post-certified course if the person has become ineligible to hold office as a peace officer pursuant to section 1029 of the Government Code, or if their peace officer certification, 1, is currently suspended by either the commission or the executive director of post. This shall only apply during the period of suspension. 2, has been revoked by the commission, or 3, was voluntarily surrendered to the commission. Then B again states, if an immediate temporary suspension does not result in a commission action, the individual may be reinstated as an eligible instructor in a post-certified course upon reinstatement of their certification. Are there any questions on that option? So we would request that the commission either make a motion to adopt the proposed text of option A or a motion to adopt the proposed text of option B.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is another option, and that option is to do nothing. And the question came up during our training of peace officers in terms of SB2. What happens if somebody is decertified or they lose their certification? Can they still teach? So that is option C. If we do nothing, then an individual who is under suspension or has been suspended or has had their certification revoked is still permitted to teach in a post-certified course, or we take one of these actions. So that was the impetus to bring this forward to you.
So just to be clear, if we do nothing, then somebody who has been decertified or somebody who's in the decertification process anywhere along the line could continue to teach for post?
Correct. There is no prohibition in post regulation and they could still teach.
Okay, So we have options A, B, and C. Did the advisory committee have any comments on that?
Madam Chair, no comments from the advisory committee on this item.
Okay, so someone can just start off making, yes, Commissioner Ntient.
I do have a question from legal. Is there a preference on either A or B?
A preference, okay. So, yeah, so I'm not going to say that legal has a preference on either A or B. It is truly at the discretion of the commission. The question with respect to, could either version of this regulation be challenged by someone? Of course, they might. I think that, nevertheless, under applicable law, we are not forbidding someone from teaching or from teaching a peace officer course. They can. The only thing it does is says that they cannot teach a post-certified course. So we're not removing their ability to practice in their profession. As to the two, option B has, is modified in that the suspension period, the person is not able to apply only during the period of the suspension. So if there was a legal challenge, that's a narrower restriction, and it might be somewhat easier to defend. But having said that, option A, I think, is also defensible, because if someone has been suspended, it means that the commission has determined that that individual engaged in serious misconduct as a peace officer. And so even if the commission determined that despite that there was serious misconduct, that a suspension of, say, a year or 2 years or whatever was appropriate, I think it would still be defensible for the commission to say, the commission determined that this individual engaged in one of the acts of serious misconduct, and therefore the commission does not want that individual teaching other peace officers in California. So no preference. I think they are both defensible.
Thank you for the question. Okay, so is there a motion? And if so, please articulate whether it's for A, B, or C. Yes, Commissioner Luan. Okay, is there a second?
Second, Tomlin.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Sheriff, that's not funny. Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Okay, so we have for B, we have a first, we have a second. Any questions, comments? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? I hear none. Abstentions? I hear none. Therefore, this passes unanimously. Thank you. Item F1 is a report on proposed changes to Commission Regulation 1052 requirement for course certification, more specifically course instructors. Bureau Chief. Did I read that already? Okay, we're turning that now. Moving on, F2 is a report on Commission Regulation 1205, serious misconduct. Assistant Executive Anna Marie Delmagul, Executive Office, and Bureau Chief Michelle Weiler, Certification Bureau, will provide a report on this item. Thank you.
I know you guys are so excited for me to bring this back to you again.
Here for moral support.
So as you're all aware, at our September 22nd meeting, you all voted to amend the previously proposed text so that the overarching definition is amended to read only as serious misconduct is, and then leads into the 9 categories. Because we made a substantive text change, we had to open up a 15-day public comment period. And during that period, we did receive 2 public comments. One of them actually referenced text changes that were proposed in a prior 15-day period. So what you have before you is a public comment from the American Civil Liberties Union, specifically related to this change, where they are opposing the removal of the overarching definition. And we are bringing this back to you again pursuant to the Administrative Procedures Act, and the commission must consider the public comment submitted by the American Civil Liberties Union. So there are, again, two motions before you in this regard, or two options before you in this regard. If the commission concurs with its previous decision and motion, the appropriate action would be a motion to keep the language previously adopted by the commission. Or the commission may amend its prior approved language, given the new comments from the American Civil Liberties Union. And if that is what the commission chooses, then the appropriate motion would be to amend a motion to amend the language previously approved by the commission and further define an overarching definition of serious misconduct.
Let me make a suggestion. Because we've changed this previously, the word previously would probably be a problem, because previous to what? I think in your second explanation, you use the word prior, which I think would be much more descriptive of what those two motions are. So would you read that again, and instead of saying previously, use prior?
Yes. So the first would be if the commission concurs with its prior decision and motion, the appropriate action would be a motion to keep the language approved prior by the commission. Alternatively, the commission may amend its prior approved language in light of the comments received from the American Civil Liberties Union. If that is the direction the commission would like to go, the appropriate motion would be to amend the language approved prior, with the language the commission approved prior, and further define the overarching definition of serious misconduct. Sorry, it just didn't sound.
Okay,
right.
I understand, and it is confusing, but just because we've been here before.
Yes.
Didn't want to come here again. Is there a motion to amend the language, the prior language that was approved by the commission, and further define an overarching definition of serious misconduct? Is there such a motion? Are there questions, comments? Is there a motion to keep the language previously approved prior? Is there a motion to keep the language that had been approved at the most recent prior date? Wow, approved by the commission.
Yes, Madam
Oh.
Chair, Donlin, we'll keep the.
Thank you. Okay, any questions, comments?
Not the only one.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. One abstention, and that's Commissioner Yule. Otherwise, all in favor with aye, so it is not unanimous. There was one abstention.
Correct.
Moving on. Okay, thank you. Item F3 is report on proposed changes to Commission Regulation 1203, 1204, 1206, 1207, 1208, 1209, and 1210, all related to Senate Bill 2. Assistant Executive Director Ana Marie Delgado and Chief Counsel Toby Darden will provide a report on this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The commission has seen most of this at previous meetings in various forms. This package, while it is all one rulemaking file right now before the Office of Administrative Law, in order to vote on the language to where we have a record that the commission itself has approved each section, we will take each section separately and vote on each section. There's some context here for you about each section's content and what it refers to, why it's important to the work that we're about to do come January 1st. In particular, section 1203 talks about a delegation on the part of the commission to the staff to affirm what's in the statute, which is essentially that if there is someone who's been found in a judgment to be convicted of a felony, that individual is now ineligible to be a peace officer in the state of California, and the commission shall revoke that certification. And as opposed to bringing each of those cases before the commission, since it's a affirmative shall revoke, there is a request in the regulation to set up a procedure where staff would procedurally handle this administratively and then report out on consent. So I'm going to turn it over to Toby to further explain or answer any questions you may have on that delegation, but that's the intent of 1203.
Okay, and I'll try to do it quickly. So there's a big difference in Senate Bill 2 between a revocation because of a disqualifier in Government Code 1029 as opposed to a revocation for serious misconduct. In the case of serious misconduct, there are a number of discretionary decisions that the commission needs to make, looking at the factual pattern and then determining if it fits within one of the categories and making those discretionary determinations. Is a revocation or a suspension warranted? Yes or no? Is there clear and convincing evidence? That is very different from the question of revocation of an officer for the reasons set forth in Government Code 1029, which includes felony convictions. There are now some new provisions for certain misdemeanor provisions and some other equivalency type provisions. But the bottom line is, in that section of the Government Code 1029, those individuals who have suffered those disqualifying acts, they are disqualified from holding office as a peace officer or from being employed as a peace officer in California. And by the statute, they are disqualified from any office or employment by any entity, any public entity, with or without compensation in a position which confers upon them the powers and duties of a peace officer. In addition to Government Code 1029, Senate Bill 2 has a provision which says, it's 13.5.10.8, that a certified peace officer shall have their certification revoked if the person is or has become ineligible to hold office as a peace officer pursuant to section 1029. As lawyers, we think of this as what's called a ministerial obligation. If you have a conviction, you're revoked, period. So the way that the statute set up the process for going to the board and then going to the commission and then the commission sending it to an ALJ and so forth, that is in the circumstance of serious misconduct. The legislation didn't give us a procedure for how we revoke in the case of a disqualifying conviction under 1029. So this is the procedure that we have come up with. We think that it's important if an individual, a peace officer, has a felony conviction, let's just say rape, murder, something like that, that for us to put together a package, put it through the process of then going to the commission for a review, having a determination by the commission, going to an ALJ hearing, et cetera, is completely unnecessary because, again, this is a ministerial obligation. If you have a conviction, you are disqualified and you do get your certification revoked. So we have written this procedure in a way that, recognizing that the commission still does ultimately have the authority to revoke. But nevertheless, we've asked for some delegated authority by the commission that in the event there's a determination by staff with working with legal and looking at a particular factual situation, if there is a determination that the individual is disqualified under Government Code 1029, then staff would send that person a notice of intent to revoke their certification. That individual would be given an opportunity to respond to 30 days. If the individual did not respond, the staff would issue an interim order of disqualification. That would be pending commission approval at the next regularly scheduled meeting. We would envision that that would occur on a consent calendar. If the individual responded and provided their factual and legal basis for their contention that they did not suffer a disqualifying conviction, that would then be reviewed by staff. If staff agreed that the individual was correct, then there would be no revocation action. If the staff believed after review that it was still appropriate, it would again send out an interim order and then bring it back before the commission for the commission to vote on the matter at the next commission meeting, again pursuant to a consent calendar. The commission would, of course, always be able, if there was a particular case that for whatever reason it wanted to remove from consent and hear separately, it could always do that, of course. So for now, we believe this is a good way to permit an expeditious action in the case of a conviction, which is a very serious offense, to allow us in the interest of public safety to take imminent action in order to protect the public pending the matter coming to the commission. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Any questions? There don't appear to be any questions. Did the advisory committee have any comments on this item?
Madam Chair, no comments on this.
Is there a motion to approve the modifications to Commission Regulation 1203 as described in the staff report? Second? Questions, comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstention? The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll move on to 1204. Your
Yes,
permission?
please.
1204, you've seen before, we had to remove some of the duplicative statutory language to comply with OAL's requirement for non-duplication. Essentially, what this is if there is a appointment made, and we learn that that appointment was made, and there was facts that were misrepresented, if there was fraud, or if there was an error, administrative error, this gives posts the authority to remove that individual, first cancel the appointment and remove that individual from the agency roster.
Are there any questions? Did the advisory committee have any comments on this item?
No comments, Madam Chair.
Is there a motion to approve the modifications to Commission Regulation 1204 as described in the staff report? Second? Any questions, comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. On to 1206.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 1206 really has to do with peace officers' rights when they're under investigation or being interrogated for the purposes of investigation, and also the process for submitting public complaints. Again, what you're seeing in strikeout here is duplicative of the statute. So there was an effort to remove this, also make clarifying changes when we determine that there is a complaint charge or allegation that could render a peace officer subject to suspension or revocation, that the agency has an obligation to report that under our next regulation 1207. I believe that was already approved. And then some renumbering.
Thank you. Any questions? Comments? And this is to 1206, right? Just keeping track, 1206?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the modifications to Commission Regulation 1206 as described in the staff report? Second? Questions, comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Okay, on to 1207, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This really outlines the reporting requirements for an agency to report serious misconduct to the commission or to the division. Again, removal of duplicative statutory language from this regulatory proposal. Also some clarifying amendments with regard to if there is a pending appeal or review, what happens in terms of tolling. And then there's just some other very non-substantive changes and renumbering.
Thank you. Any questions? Comments? Is there a motion to approve the modification to Commission 1207 as described in the staff report? Second? Questions, comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. On to 1208, please.
1208, thank you, Madam Chair. 1208 is the delegation of the temporary suspension of the certification, which is delegated to the executive director by statute. Again, removal of duplicative language, clarifying penal code section regarding that permission for the executive director to take that administrative action as necessary.
Any questions? Is there a motion to approve the modification to Commission Regulation 1207?
1208.
1208. Second? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Now on to 1209, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 1209 is the notification of completed investigation. Again, here we did remove some language that did not follow procedurally the protocol that we wanted to lay out. There wasn't much in terms of removing duplicative statute here. This is really just clarifying the process of what the division will do upon a completion of an investigation. There's nothing particularly substantive. If you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Questions? Is there a motion to approve the modification to Commission Regulation 1209 as described in the staff report? Second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. On to 1210, please.
1210 is our voluntary surrender process for peace officers who are subject to misconduct investigations and choose to voluntarily surrender their certification as opposed to going through a revocation appeal and hearing. Again, we removed some context that was in the voluntary surrender form, which is part of this regulatory package that talks about termination agreements between peace officers and their employing agencies. Those were not particularly relevant and could be, legally troubling because those agreements often have many disclaimers in them that we did not want to include as part of our attachment for the purposes of voluntary surrender. And I will also ask Toby to provide any comments he thinks are relevant to this proposed regulation.
Yeah, I don't have any additional comments on 1210.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? Is there a motion to approve the modifications to Commission Regulation 1210 as described in the staff report?
Madam Chair, may I interject a question? The form?
I'm sorry.
We want to discuss the changes to the form.
Yeah, it is hereby incorporated by reference in this regulation. So the language itself includes the form that will be the form used for peace officers to voluntarily surrender their license or their certification. What is being stricken from the language is also consistent with what's being removed from the form, and both are in front of you. Thank you.
And that's as to 1210. Let's start
Yes,
that
ma'am.
again. Then is there a motion to approve the modifications to Commission Regulation 1210 as described in the staff report? Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. One moment, please. Okay. Now on to item F4 is a report on proposed changes to Commission Regulation 1213, suspension and revocation of peace officer certification. Assistant Executive Director Anna Marie Delgado and Chief Counsel Toby Darden will provide a report on this item.
All right, well, once again, I try to be brief. If you hear a lawyer say they're going to try to be brief, never believe it, but nevertheless, I will. This is the regulatory section that instructs the commission with respect to factors to take into account with respect to whether or not a suspension or revocation is appropriate in any given case. And it has, for lack of a better term, a laundry list of factors for consideration. The previous version, the language that we had was that the commission may consider any of the following factors, such as the nature and severity of the act, circumstances surrounding the conduct, etc. We did receive some public comment. The California Police Chief Association and PORAC believe that may should be changed to shall, so that the commission shall consider all of those factors. The ACLU's comments were much more expansive and centered around the argument or the belief that the factors that are listed were actually narrowing the commission's authority to suspend a peace officer certification, in essence, to give them a get out of jail free card. That is not the intention, of course, of the regulation. The intent of the regulation is to have a list of factors for the commission to consider, in effect, to give the commission the ability to look to this list to get additional facts and circumstances so that when it does make a decision as to whether a revocation or a suspension is appropriate, it has in fact a complete factual background and a complete understanding of all of the circumstances so that it can make the best and most appropriate decision. Whether any of these factors is met or not is not dispositive. So for instance, if the concern of anyone in the public is whether the person is currently employed as a peace officer, which is one of the factors, that isn't dispositive. It's still possible that somebody who is not currently employed as a peace officer, we would still want to decertify. But again, these are just factual background facts that we think it's important that the commission consider so that, again, it has a complete understanding of all of the facts and circumstances and can make the best decision. We did also receive some feedback from OAL. OAL also believed that the word may should be removed and should be exchanged with the word shall, as was recommended by a couple of the public commenters. And OAL's belief was that leaving it may was too discretionary, that it then wasn't clear under what circumstances the factors would or would not be considered. And so from a regulatory perspective, it would be better to have the word shall. Nevertheless, even as amended, what the regulation says is the commission shall consider any of the following factors. And so obviously it would be any of the factors that are relevant to the particular factual circumstance. And so that's it. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Doesn't appear there are any questions. Do the advisory committee have any comments on this item?
Madam Chair, the advisory committee was in support of this change of language from may to shall, as reflected also in the correspondence from Cal Chiefs and FORA.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the
Madam Chair?
modification of the proposed text as described in the staff report?
Madam Chair, may I add something?
Yes, please.
We did receive one public comment from CAL FIRE after the agenda was posted, and that should be in the package that is before you so that you can review that. They were primarily clarifying questions or comments that I believe we have addressed here. And then one other non-substantive item that I want to make you aware of, in striking the section A and section B, we inadvertently forgot to renumber. So just an advisement that this section, subsections will be renumbered accordingly.
Excellent. Thank you for those clarifications. So was there a motion? Not yet. Is there a motion? Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Item G1 is a report on proposed changes to Commission Regulation 1953, 1954, and 1955, appointment of peace officers. Staff Services Manager Melanie Singley, Strategic Communications and Research Bureau will provide a report on this item.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioner.
Actually, would you, is that on? Okay. If it's on, you're fine.
Can you hear
Be
me?
Quiet.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Is that better? Can talk closer. This item is to modify Commission Regulation 1953, 54, and 55. Essentially, it's all of the changes are in relation to providing a more consistent documentation process at the back end of the background investigation and the medical and psychological evaluations. I think in front of you should be an underlined strikeout version of the regulations. I think this is going to be up on the screen here in a minute as well. I think that the version you have in the agenda is what it would look like if you approve the changes, but the underlined strikeout is before you. So Commission Regulation 1953 is peace officer background investigation, which provides specific requirements to ensure that a thorough background investigation is conducted and that candidates are of good moral character and have no past behaviors indicative of unsuitability for peace officer employment. Background requirements include verification of employment eligibility, reference checks, criminal and other qualifications records checks, among other things. The background investigation must also consider the background investigation dimensions and relevant information from the bias assessment framework and requires the completion of a narrative report that contains sufficient information for a department to make a hiring decision. The narrative report, along with any other relevant information, must also be provided to the screening psychologist as required for their evaluation. Currently, there is no mandated format for the required narrative report. The proposed changes to Commission Regulation 1953, in this case, it's 1953 G1, which is up on the screen there and before you, is to require specific information and sequencing of the background narrative report consistent with the current required areas of investigation. This will ensure that the narrative report provides necessary and relevant information to assist agencies with making a hiring decision and provide the psychological evaluator with requisite background information. It will also provide consistency across departments and background investigations, ultimately providing for a more effective and efficient review of background information by the hiring department, screening psychologist, and post auditors conducting compliance inspections. So it's not essentially changing any of the procedures on the front end, what's required of the background investigation. It's just changing the format of the narrative report and allowing for a more consistent narrative report for the background file. So that's the first recommendation is for 1953.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Did the advisory committee have any comments on this item?
No comments, Madam Chair.
Is there a motion to approve the proposed changes as described in the staff report? Second? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Okay, Training Program Service Bureau. What?
Two more.
Okay. Okay, 1954 and 1955.
Right.
Okay.
That's okay. I kind of paused there, so that was my fault. So there's other additional changes for Commission Regulations 1954 and 1955, which are the medical evaluation, the psychological evaluation. They provide requirements to determine medical and psychological suitability to ensure that candidates are free from any physical, emotional, or mental condition. The regulations provide specific evaluation and documentation requirements, including a suitability declaration, which is signed by the screening physician and psychologist. Currently, there's no required form. We just had listed, and you'll see in the regulation, just certain things that had to be included on the suitability declaration report. To address the issues with the inconsistency found in background files, often reports are either they have too much information or not enough. We have developed these declaration forms that would be required. And those are part of your package as well. So it outlines the specific requirements that need to be in the report. They'll have to use that suitability declaration form rather than creating their own form is essentially what this regulation is, or these regulations for 54 and 55 are doing, is adopting that form in lieu of a something that the
Any further
psychologist would.
comments about 1955, or they're both being considered together?
54 and 55 both. So they're very similar. They have the same suitability declaration. Both of the proposed forms outline the specific requirements for the medical evaluation, the psychological evaluation. It has a suitability declaration statement on there. It has to be signed by the physician. It's the same information as far as the candidate's name, when it was conducted, the license information on the individual conducting the evaluation.
Okay, thank you. On to 1954 and 1955. Are there any questions? The advisory committee have any comments?
I actually have a question.
Oh, ready.
On 54, without any accommodations. So my question would be, because I wear glasses.
Yeah.
How does that?
Oh, so this form, so this form is just a suitability declaration. As far as the without accommodations, that part of it is any accommodations are have to be on a separate document. They can't be on the suitability declaration form. So this is just saying that this form does not contain that information.
Okay.
So any suitability declaration, and it should say on the bottom of the form. If you look at that, I will get that out. I don't know if you can put that on the screen or not. Yeah, and that's very common that people wear glasses or hearing aids and have other. It does say describe any work restrictions, limitations, or reasonable accommodations requirements on a supplemental medical information page. So that's on the form itself. And that's because this form is required to be part of the background investigation file, which can't contain medical information. So an accommodation would be medical information. It has to be kept in a separate confidential medical file. Does that make sense? I hope.
Yes.
Okay.
And my second question is actually regarding 55.
Uh-huh.
I know it's driven by what the law says.
Right.
What they're certifying and the language that's used in that. Have we had someone who's actually one of our certified police psychologists look at this language and say that that is something they would be comfortable signing, period?
So this is required currently in regulation.
Okay.
Yeah. So these, currently the requirement is they have to attest that they've met all the requirements in 1955. This is exactly what's in 1955. So they're currently attesting to this. This is just outlining what is specifically in post regulation. So if they're not comfortable attesting to this, they're not conducting their evaluations in accordance to what are current post requirements. So this language is not new. It's just now taken from regulation and put onto this form.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Gordon. Anything else? Okay, so now we're on to 1954 and 1955. Did the advisory committee have any comments on this?
No comments on this, Madam Chair.
Is there a motion to approve the proposed changes as described in the staff report as to both 1954 and 1955? Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Training Program Service Bureau, item H1 is a report on proposed changes to Commission Regulation 1070 and 1082, minimal standards for instructors. Bureau Chief Mike Radford, Professional Conduct for Bureau, will provide a report on this item.
Afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. So again, this is a report on a proposed update for Regulation 1070, 1082, instructor refresher training. Regulation 1070 requires minimum training standards for primary and non-primary instructors of certain specialized subjects or completion of an equivalency process. To satisfy the training course requirements, a post-certified course must meet the minimum content requirements specified in Regulation 1082. Once an instructor or instructors have completed the post-required instructor training, no other update or refresher training is currently required. With the formation of Regulation 1070 in 2002, the Commission formalized expectations among stakeholders that persons who instruct in certain high-risk liability areas shall attend a post-certified instructor development course or an equivalency on the related subject. The codification of instructional requirements was a step in furtherance to ensuring the highest quality of instruction in post-certified training. Not all instructors have the ability to instruct in a specialized course multiple times or even a single time in a year due to the evolving nature of state and federal legislation, as well as applicable case law. Staff and subject matter experts believe instructors in specialized subjects should participate in refresher training to attain up-to-date and relevant knowledge in their instructional discipline. Staff and subject matter experts also believe instructors in use of force should be required to complete a specialty course or an equivalency process as well in order to ensure the skills they are conveying to students is commensurate with best practices in the use of de-escalation strategies or other available use of force options as related in recent legislation that's attached in this item, and to better address community expectations and professional standards. An effort to ensure instructors of Regulation 1070 courses are maintaining current and relevant training, POST has taken proactive steps and gathered information for certain specialized subjects and identified the need for instructors to take mandatory refresher training. To address the issue, POST staff met with subject matter experts in the subjects of arrest control, firearms, emergency vehicle operations, and use of force. Subject matter experts were consulted in determining the following. Should a particular subject require refresher training? What would the minimum length of training consist of? Subjects, frequency, and should there be an equivalency process? Of the 4 specialized subjects, use of force is not currently listed in 1070, but we are putting that in as a new subject for 1070 consideration. Subject matter experts were unanimously, in agreement, advising instructors in the identified specialized subjects should attend update training as a requirement to continue instructing. Subject matter experts gave various lengths of how they felt updated training should be. None of the experts felt that any hourly requirement below 4 hours would suffice, identifying 4 hours as the minimum any update instructor course should be in length. Setting a minimum standard of 4 hours would provide individual agencies and presenters the latitude to conduct update training longer than 4 hours and to a standard they feel is necessary. The only specialized subject where the equivalency would be appropriate is use of force. Many current use of force instructors are selected by presenters based on demonstrated expertise, including practicing attorneys. Identified instructors who have taught within the past 2 years, as well as practicing attorneys, were identified as instructors qualifying for initial instructor course equivalency. Course presenters would have the responsibility to attest that document the instructor's qualification for equivalency. Subject matter experts were in agreement advising the minimum learning objectives for update training should be the same minimum learning objectives, which is already codified in Regulation 1082 in each specialized subject. The attachments were the strikeout underlined. Post staff does recommend approval of the amendments 1070 and 1082 if approved. I'm open for any questions, please.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions? Did the advisory committee have any comments on this item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was comment on this item from Mr. Walt Allen, representing the California Academy Directors Association with regards to an item is probably out of post scope with regards to funding for community colleges to train instructors, and then also questions with regards to availability of the courses for trainers. But both of those issues were, I think, effectively addressed by post staff in that discussion.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the proposed changes as described in the staff report? Thank you. Second? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Now on to committee reports. We did not have a finance committee meeting. I'm turning it over then to the advisory committee. The advisory committee chief, Jason Salazar, will report on the advisory committee meeting held this morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the advisory committee meeting today was productive. We did recognize an outgoing advisory committee member, Alex Bernard, who has served on the committee since 2007, representing the Retired Peace Officers Association. And today was his last meeting on the advisory committee. We also received presentations and items you've already heard with regards to the SB2 implementation status, the wellness items, as well as regulations 1213 and 1205. And comments have already been provided to the commission on those items. We also heard from committee member Walt Allen from CADA with regards to, and also from committee member Kathy Oborn from KG with regards to concerns over the implementation of AB 89, as Director Alvarez also discussed earlier on the modern policing degree. The concerns there being that neither CADA nor KG had representation on the AB 89 task force to provide input as to what that curriculum might look like, but particularly the rollout and implementation and the impacts it may have on their organizations and that provide this training to potential students. And then finally, we heard from committee member Jamie Young, who raised questions with regards to the Public Safety Dispatch Advisory Council. We received a presentation from post staff providing updates on the status of the Dispatch Advisory Council, job task analysis status, and the status of communications leadership courses for supervisors and managers in a very critical field, obviously in our occupation with dispatch. But then also committee member Young also requested for consideration by post progress and additional information related to the certification status of dispatch supervisors and managers and similar challenges in the dispatch field related to recruitment and retention issues in dispatch centers. And we received a report on that, and the post staff has that information from the committee. Thank you, ma'am.
Any questions for Chief Salazar? Do I have a motion to accept the advisory committee report? Second? All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes and it is unanimous. On to old business. At this time, I would like to call upon Executive Director Alvarez to discuss old business items.
Madam Chair, there are no old business items, but I will address several under the next section.
Thank you. So I'll ask you about new business. At this time, I would like to call upon Executive Director Alvarez to discuss new business items.
Okay. First item is the Finance Committee. And I know Commissioner Long just stepped out of the room, but I think there should be some consideration for adding additional members to the Finance Commission. We have lost, or the Finance Committee, we've lost 3 in the last 12 months. 3 commissioners who have retired or moved on. We're down to 3. We were unable to hold a meeting today based on the number of 3 individuals, 1 being ill, 1 not being able to attend. I think it's important that we continue with the Finance Committee. I think it serves a very significant role in oversight of how we're doing our business and spending our money. We also spend a significant amount of time addressing contracts such as the wellness contract in detail. That comes to the commission with a yay or a nay, usually from the finance committee. They do all the legwork. So I would recommend the commission consider adding additional members to the finance committee so we can hold future meetings. Otherwise, I think we will continue to struggle.
We need a motion for that? Yes. Okay. So the question is, we do need additional members. There's no doubt about that. Because they weren't able to have a meeting today. So is there a motion to add, to have other, we're not adding spots, so have commissioners presently. How would you phrase it?
So Manny, the current committee is 3, is that right?
Current committee is 3. We lost
Do you want to add-
commissioners
is there a
Doyle,
specific
Bowie.
number you'd like to add?
My recommendation would be having a total of 7. We had 6 before, and at times we had a very limited number of commissioners at those hearings with 6. I think 7 would be the magic number, at least for now.
Right, so so currently there are 6 spots, but they're just not filled. So you're adding 1 to make it a total of 7?
It's not statutory. It's
Right.
whoever the commission
Right, of course.
decides. So I don't think there has ever been like a magic number with now
There hasn't.
vacancies.
Okay,
It's just whoever the commission has put on it.
right. Okay.
Yes.
I think there are 2 things. One is a motion to add an additional member. And do you think we need a motion for that, given that it's not mandatory?
Well, yes, so the commission should delegate the composition or identification of the finance committee. So if we want to have so many, if the suggestion would be that there be 7 members on the delegated committee, then I think we could have that motion. Then the next question would be who's on it, and we could have nominations and so forth. Was that what you were thinking?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start with part 1. Is there a motion to expand the number of people on the finance committee to 7? There's a second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Now the tougher one. Who wants to be on the finance committee? Oh. Thank you very much, Commissioner Yule. And Commissioner O'Rourke. And the others can think about it, and we can bring this up again, and Commissioner Niento. So that's increasing. I don't think we need an election. Do you?
No, I think if they volunteer.
I think
that
that's it.
Should be sufficient.
Okay.
Congratulations, you're elected.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much, and others might think about it. And at our next meeting, the chair can bring this up again under new business.
May I continue with this?
Please.
For new business, Madam Chair, thank you. So the last portion of new business are the future commission meetings. So we've scheduled out future commission meetings into 2023 for your schedule, and please let us know if these do not work now or down the road. But we've scheduled September 21, 2023 in a location to be determined, more than likely in Southern California, since that is when we hold that meeting. November 29th and 30th, 2023, here at Post headquarters in West Sacramento. March 6th through the 7th, 2024. Again, that is another meeting that we usually do in Southern California, so location to be determined, but more than likely Southern California. And then June 5th and 6th, 2024 at Post headquarters in West Sacramento. And I do believe there's one more, Madam Chair. I apologize. There's 3. The other would be, there is a request to reappoint Deputy Eric Schmidt from the Fresno County Sheriff's Department as part of Peace Officer Research Association of California to continue his appointment to the Post Advisory Committee as his term is expiring. That
Any
concludes.
questions about that? Thank you. So that would be the motion to, if the commission concurs, the appropriate action would be a motion to approve the reappointment of Deputy Eric Schmidt to the advisory committee. I think that's been made and second but let's be sure. Is there a motion to approve? Second, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Future commission dates. Upcoming commission meetings will be held March 22nd through 23rd in Anaheim, June 7th, 8th, and Post in West Sacramento. There will not be a closed session for this meeting, commissioners. Is there anything else? Hearing nothing, I will call for the motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there such a motion? Second? Ms. Moore? You want me to use the gavel? Oh, really? Okay.
Ow.
Okay, so there was a motion to adjourn the meeting and a second, and all in favor? Opposed?
Yes.
So what do you want, Maria? Oh, I hit him and then I hit him. There's a motion for the, to adjourn the meeting. And there was, let's do that again, everybody. Let's make this good. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? Second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you all. You know what? I don't think I have a travel.